On September 28, 1998, Raccoon City welcomed a person who did not originally belong to this world. Luo Guang. With a fully adaptive evolutionary protection system, Luo Guang faces this familiar yet unfamiliar world. Against the backdrop of frequent global biochemical crises, he follows the trend of the times and walks out of the evolution of humanity that belongs to this world. Based solely on the Resident Evil game series as the worldview. Keywords of the novel. Evolution starts from the Resident Evil without pop-ups. Evolution starts from the Resident Evil. Download the complete text, and evolution starts from the Resident Evil. Read the latest chapters. Chapter 1. Traversing Raccoon City on September 28, 1998. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Traversing Raccoon City on September 28, 1998. Luo Guang, which would you choose to travel through? Raccoon City, Ziyuan Star, and Silent Ridge. In a peaceful afternoon, there was only Luo Guang and his son in the university dormitory, while the other two people in the dormitory went out early to go shopping with their girlfriends, leaving only one lying in bed playing with his phone and the other sitting on a chair playing computer. Upon hearing his friend suddenly ask this question, Luo Guang, who was lying in bed playing with his phone, didn't find it strange. After thinking for a moment, he replied, Raccoon City, it's relatively safer. Is that right? My friend's voice became very strange, and a hoarse and distorted voice suddenly sounded in Luo Guang's ear. Luo Guang shifted his gaze from his phone to the bedside, and what caught his eye were his friend's peeling skin, corpses wriggling in the black and red rotting flesh, and the eerie smile that made him feel chilly. Ah! Luo Guang, who was sleeping soundly on his own bed, woke up from a nightmare and suddenly flipped over to sit up on the wooden bed, sweating profusely. It's been several years since graduation. Why do you still have such nightmares? Luo Guang, who had already entered society, gently shook his head and took a few deep breaths. As he was about to fall asleep again, Luo Guang's body paused and he looked at the green bedding in his hand drowsily. This is not my blanket. I am not wearing pajamas, but a black vest that I have never seen before. Not only that, but also Luo Guang lifted his head and looked around. He was not in his familiar bedroom, nor was the three-flower cat that often slept next to him. It was a room that he had no impression of. There isn't much furniture inside the house, just a bed, an office desk, and a wardrobe. There's no extra decoration, that's all. Just woke up, Luo Guang, who was not fully awake, fell into confusion for a moment, unable to confirm whether he was still in a dream. The protection system is loading. Suddenly, a neutral, emotionless voice rang out in Luo Guang's mind. Before Luo Guang could ponder the meaning of these words, a severe pain suddenly exploded in his head, pushing him back to bed as he was about to stand up. The sound of the first character on the head of a certain grass flower burst out from Luo Guang's mouth. Before he could stand firm, Luo Guang collapsed backwards, his eyes tightly closed, and his hands tightly pressed against the painful head. He curled up on his side. Loading progress of 23.96%. Monitoring completed, adaptation rate of 120%, meeting the conditions, continue loading. Although he had a severe headache, one sentence after another rang out clearly in Luo Guang's mind, and the pain became even stronger, causing him to lose his sense of the passage of time. The system has been loaded and users are welcome to use it. I don't know how long it has been, but Luo Guang, who had been unable to activate his body's protective mechanism and had fainted from pain, finally survived and his whole body was already soaked. As the system was loaded, the pain in his head disappeared like an illusion, and Luo Guang, who was sweating all over, miraculously did not feel any fatigue all over his body, but his stomach began to beat out of place. What is the system? Although he had some thoughts in his heart, Luo Guang still spoke up and asked. The protection system, also known as the Adaptive Evolutionary Protection System, is responsible for assisting adapters in completing the biological system program of their own evolution. The system relies on adapters to provide computation and power. Adapters are advised to pay attention to protecting their brain health and providing sufficient nutrition. It's really that kind of legendary golden finger, Luo Guang said without uttering this sentence, only pondering in his heart, but the system still replied to him. This system is not a golden finger, it aims to assist the adaptation in evolution and coordinate the adaptation's physical development. Based on the adaptation's knowledge, this system is more similar to an assistive biological brain. The sound sounded in his mind, which also made Luo Guang understand that he only needed to come up with the words to say in his mind to communicate with the system. With this thought in mind, Luo Guang got up and got out of bed, searching for the unfamiliar room with dual purposes. He asked in his heart, what does auxiliary mainly refer to? Judging from the tone of this system, it is not the kind of cheating system that can exchange for powerful items, but it is also a groundbreaking product. In order to make the most of things, Luo Guang urgently needs to understand the system's functions and make good plans. 1. The physical fitness and skills of data-driven adapters. 2. Assist the adaptive control of the body, improve the accuracy and strength of movements, and reduce the consumption of endurance. 3. Assisted memory and learning. 4. Predict and assist adapters in selecting evolutionary paths. Other functions will be activated after meeting the conditions. My current body data seems to have triggered the keyword. Just as Luo Guang had the idea of viewing body data, the system had already processed the data and presented it to him. Adapter ID 00001S name. Luo Guang adaptability level. S. Age. 25 years old. Gender. Male. Some basic information was briefly skimmed over by Luo Guang, with a focus on the later part. Strength. 7. Standard male is 5, which is a comprehensive attribute of grip strength, explosive strength, upper and lower limb strength, etc. Flexibility. 7. The standard male is 5, which is a combination of agility, softness, body reaction speed, jumping ability, and other aspects. Endurance. 8. The standard male is 5, which is a comprehensive attribute of lung capacity, muscle endurance, cardiovascular endurance, and other aspects. Intelligence. 6. The standard male is 5, which is a comprehensive attribute of thinking speed, intelligence and emotional intelligence, memory ability, imagination, and other aspects. Willpower. 10. 5 for standard males, special ability. None. The standard value is 5, but I am all above the standard. Luo Guang looked at his decent value and was quite proud, not in vain for maintaining self-discipline for so long. The human body limit is 12, which is easy to exceed the standard value, but it is difficult to break through the limit. The higher the value, the greater the difficulty of each improvement. Just as Luo Guang was a little proud, the system's words poured cold water on his face. After hearing the system's words, Luo Guang paused slightly as he flipped through the drawers. He pursed his lips and continued to search, but without convincing the mechanical system of its ideas, he continued to confirm the system's capabilities and some unfamiliar terms. What do you mean by adaptability? Adaptability refers to the degree of adaptation to the system, and the higher the adaptability, the more evolutionary paths one can choose, and the more likely it is to surpass human limits and complete human evolution, the system quickly responded. The evolution of humanity. Luo Guang was puzzled. How could he represent the evolution of all humanity on his own? The successful evolution of individuals represents the possibility of human evolution. It is difficult to go from 0 to 1, but going from 1 to 2 is simple, just like the development of various technologies in humans. Detailed content and more questions can be learned through the instruction manual. Through thinking, Luo Guang retrieved the suddenly emerging content of the instruction manual from his mind, carefully read it, and continued to ask, are there anyone else who can adapt? Because there is numbering information in the emerging information, coupled with what the system just mentioned, Luo Guang asked with some concern. A person owning a system is different from a group of people owning a system. Rare things are precious. If many people own a system, they need to think carefully about how to ensure their advantages. This system is the first to undergo adaptive installation. According to monitoring, no other adapters have been found within the scope. At the same time, the system has entered stealth mode immediately after installation and startup based on the adapter's personalities, and has been scanned to ensure that there are no other adapter startup reactions. Although the system's words sound good, it is unclear whether there will be new adapters in the future, and the system's words feel like it has been observing itself in the dark for a long time. Keep interval scanning. Luo Guang could only keep the system on alert. While chatting with the system, Luo Guang confirmed its capabilities and finally completed the search of the entire room. Fortunately, the room was not large, a single-story apartment with one living room, one kitchen, and one bathroom, and there was very little furniture and personal belongings. Luo Guang didn't spend much time completing the search. Taking a bite at the corner of the chocolate plate, Luo Guang searched for the items he had found on the table. Suddenly, he saw a work permit from a well-known biotech company, which made Luo Guang, who was chewing on the bitter chocolate that was difficult to swallow, stop and fall into silence. After a brief silence, a series of foul words followed: umbrella company, madfark. The notorious company logo in a certain game is prominently printed in the upper right corner of the work permit, in addition to the employee's identity information. His name shares the same surname as Luo Guang, and his department is the Raccoon City branch of Amber Company's intelligence department. However, there is no photo posted on it, which feels more suitable for Luo Guang to use for fishing in troubled waters. In addition, there is only a long string of employee numbers. Besides exercising, Luo Guang, who enjoys reading novels to regulate his body and mind, now naturally understands that he has encountered the same kind of time travel and is likely to have replaced an employee of the same name and surname from an Amber company. From a natural perspective, he is in opposition to the main protagonist group in the biochemical crisis. But apart from cursing loudly, Luo Guang currently doesn't have any good way to deal with it, so he can only talk about walking. Although we have our own system, it seems that this system is much weaker than other systems with causal laws, but whether it can succeed in the end depends on ourselves who have the system. In addition to his work permit, Luo Guang also saw a machine that he didn't know what its purpose was, but he didn't know how to use it. He put on headphones and there was no sound coming from inside because it was heavy, so he didn't move the machine to the dining table. There are also weapons for self-defense, and Luo Guang found a Beretta M92F pistol, also known as the M9 pistol, as well as a retractable dagger in the drawer under the table where the unknown purpose machine was placed. The pistol in Luo Guang's hand has undergone a matte finish and is equipped with a silencer. It is 217 mm long, weighs 0.96 kilograms, has an initial speed of 333.7 meters per second, and an effective range of 50 meters. Although Luo Guang still enjoys watching various military videos, most of them are just a superficial taste, and the specific information about this pistol is mostly told to him by the system. According to the system description, a significant portion of the huge amount of data during the installation process is all about various information and knowledge in this world. To some extent, this system can also be considered as Luo Guang's personal database. In addition, Luo Guang also found 3 matching magazines with a capacity of 15 rounds and a box of 40 rounds of 9 by 19 mm parabellum pistol bullets. Due to the living environment, Luo Guang did not have any knowledge of using firearms. Now that conditions were in place, Luo Guang put aside his research on other things and immediately asked the system to provide on-site guidance on how to use them. After eating something, I happen to exercise slightly to help with digestion, Luo Guang thought. The isosceles triangle shooting method, in simple terms, is to face the target with the body facing straight, the feet slightly wider than the shoulder width apart, the knees slightly curved to form elastic support, the toes slightly inward, and the chest collapsed to lower the center of gravity of the body. Extend your arms naturally, hold the gun in your right hand, with your tiger's mouth facing inward in your upper palm, and wrap around the trigger guard. Or with the palm facing upwards, hold the grip below and level the gun body. Although this shooting method can help designers maintain stable shooting, it lacks flexibility. However, for Luo Guang, who doesn't have much muscle memory, this shooting method is the most suitable. Therefore, when Luo Guang asked the system if there were any relevant shooting methods, the system immediately chose this shooting method that is suitable for novice shooting. Luo Guang practiced with his gun and gestured a few times, while also having the system assist in correcting his posture. After spending more than 20 minutes, he finally received the system's approval and was able to maintain a relatively standard posture when shooting in unexpected situations. I took a look at the special electronic bracelet made by Umbrella Company in my hand, and it was almost 7:30 p.m. At this moment, Luo Guang remembered that although he knew he had traveled to a world where biochemical crises and eating were just as common, he still had no idea where he was now. Thinking of this, Luo Guang shifted his gaze to a notebook on the table. Opening it casually, Luo Guang felt a burst of cold sweat on his forehead. A name that anyone familiar with the Resident Evil game series is familiar with. Gil Valentian, which catches the eye. A bit restless, Luo Guang flipped through this notebook again. The content inside could be seen as Gil Valentian's life diary, with clear records of what he was doing at every moment, including some phone conversations with others. This room is the one monitoring Gil Valentian, and from some information in the log, it can be inferred that Luo Guang already understands in his heart that he is probably in the city that will eventually be pacified. Raccoon City. The surrounding terrain of Raccoon City is complex, surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, with only one side having access to the outside world. However, for Luo Guang, escaping the range of this nuclear strike is of utmost importance. Thinking of this, Luo Guang had no intention of staying in this room and immediately began packing up the things he found that could be used. Tearing off the umbrella logo that was taped with Velcro on the black backpack and throwing it aside, Luo Guang kept putting a bottle of bottled water into the backpack and hesitated for a moment before stuffing the unfinished notebook into it. As for the pistol and the loaded magazine, Luo Guang inserted them into the inside of a jacket. This coat is placed next to the bed and has been specially modified to look like a regular black jacket without any decorations, giving a cool feeling. But on the inside of the clothes, there is a slot for the pistol and pistol magazine, and of course, there is also an inner pocket for storing other things. In addition to the pistol, Luo Guang also found a retractable dagger that had undergone matte treatment. This dagger was not large, so Luo Guang stuffed it directly into his pants bag instead of the inner pocket of his black jacket, making it convenient for him to take it out and use it at any time. After tidying up, Luo Guang confirmed again that his equipment would not affect his movements. Just as he was about to push the door and leave the room, a sound echoed through the entire apartment building, causing it to vibrate as if it was about to collapse. A strange roar rang out immediately, and a wall in the room was punched through by a giant human. However, Luo Guang did not react at first, but half opened his mouth and watched in a daze as the punch that had pierced the wall was retracted. Based on the biochemical crisis worldview, merge other monsters of the same type as the main cat. Key point. It's not a post-apocalyptic text cat. There is no second system role. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Gil Valentian. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Gil Valentian, it's a mass-produced T-virus tyrant, codenamed the Goddess of Revenge, probably on a mission to track and destroy. The dull and watery sound of the system echoed in Luo Guang's mind, bringing him back to his senses. I don't know where the system's data came from, but Luo Guang doesn't have the time or mood to ask this question at this time. Luo Guang didn't have much idea of heroes rescuing the beauty and helping out, but at this moment he was only thinking about how to stay away from the biochemical weapon called the Goddess of Revenge. I'm not the protagonist, I only have a small pistol and a small dagger in my hand, but I can't handle a tyrant-like biochemical weapon, let alone be hit by a tyrant's punch to blow my brain. Thinking so in his heart, Luo Guang moved away from the direction of constantly making rough noises and pulled his pistol out from the inside of his black jacket, learning how to open the safety and pressed the hammer like in a movie. After putting the pistol in shooting mode, Luo Guang then hid most of his body behind the sofa, squatting with both hands holding the gun and aiming at the wall in front of him. At this moment, Luo Guang, who had just arrived, had no intention of escaping because he was not familiar with the roads of the city and did not know where to escape. Therefore, now he was more focused on how to avoid the hatred of the goddess of revenge. If the information in the system is correct, he is not the target of the goddess of revenge. In addition, the owner of this room is an employee of Amber Company, which makes Luo Guang have the intention to observe the changes and adapt to them without change. Trembling with fear, Luo Guang clenched his pistol tightly, and the excitement he received from the system at first could not conceal the uncontrollable fear in his heart at this moment. Indeed, due to the advanced film and television industry before his time traveling, he had a strong adaptability when facing situations such as zombies. However, it is unclear whether the specific situation is the same as what he saw in the film and television. At this moment, Luo Guang is still unclear. The sound of battle coming from the neighboring room is like a war drum, stimulating his heart with every beat. Anyway, I was originally just a commoner. Although I don't know why I traveled here, it is clear that the world is not so friendly and harmonious. And now I don't have much combat power, even with a gun, I'm not as good as those civilians born in the lighthouse country of gun freedom. At this moment, Luo Guang was lost in thought, but his fear miraculously began to fade away. However, this did not change that Luo Guang was still a lamb waiting to be slaughtered, and could only wait for the kindness of the neighboring butcher to lift his hand and let go of his own lamb. Did he travel to this world by himself, replacing the Luo Guang, who was under the intelligence department of Amber Company? Luo Guang was not clear about his appearance and physique, which were the same as his impression of him. In addition, he did not have the memory of that Luo Guang, and did not trust the intelligence of biochemical weapons. Therefore, Luo Guang gave up the idea of contacting personnel from the Amber Company who were observing and collecting battle data from the tyrant early on. Perhaps considering the future, although the battle in the neighboring room was still very intense, Luo Guang was surprised to find that he did not have the initial nervousness and fear, but was calmly thinking. Does that thing have any weaknesses? The object of Luo Guang's inquiry is naturally the system in his mind. All fear comes from insufficient firepower to adapt to the current weapon. This system does not recommend conflicts between the adapt and the tyrant. The system seems to think that Luo Guang is going to cause trouble and asks him not to die. Understood. Luo Guang naturally didn't bother to explain, and it was better to speak directly to the rigid computer, so he directly stated that he wouldn't do anything foolish. The system continues to explain how to deal with the Tao. The main function of a tyrant codenamed the Goddess of Revenge is to track and eliminate it. Unless the adapted person blocks its Tao, it will not be actively pursued by it. It means that by avoiding this tyrant, we can avoid being threatened by this thing. Luo Guang transformed the system's words into words that he could easily understand. Although it seemed like they had been chatting for several minutes in their minds, in reality, only 1 minute had passed. The battle in the neighboring room became even more intense. Apart from the chaos caused by the tyrant, Luo Guang seemed to hear the roar of a woman. Although he had not met the woman next door and did not know her name, the person Luo Guang was monitoring from here, and when he thought of being chased by a tyrant, the answer naturally came out. The person living next door was likely Gil Valentian, one of the main characters in Resident Evil 3. If this is really a world under the biochemical crisis worldview, then the other party must be able to survive. I don't know where this confidence in strangers comes from, Luo Guang thought so. Perhaps this is just a slight sense of guilt that Luo Guang felt in order to suppress his own despair. The sound of the tyrant and Jill fighting continued, and with a loud bang, the sound of their battle began to gradually fade away. After confirming that there was no fighting for a long time, Luo Guang slowly pushed open the door of his apartment, glanced at the situation outside, and immediately covered his mouth and nose with one hand, squatting down. At this moment, what caught Luo Guang's eyes was a mess after the battle, and his first reaction was that the sound insulation and heat insulation in the room he woke up in were so good that he almost baked himself without realizing it. At some point, a fire broke out outside the door, burning with a beeping sound, as if reminding Luo Guang that time was running out. Due to the tyrant's attack, the door of the neighboring room had become shattered, and the walls had been smashed into one cave after another, making Luo Guang doubt whether the tyrant would collapse the entire building if he continued to fight like this. Fortunately, the fire was not so big that Luo Guang was not trapped by the fire in roasted sucking pig or roasted baby pig. Luo Guang quickly jumped over the hole on the floor that he did not know how to make, slightly raised his head to confirm, and then moved quickly to the emergency passage of the apartment according to the safety passage sign on the wall that was about to fall. Since waking up, he has never exercised like he does now, and it was only then that Luo Guang realized how strong the system's ability to assist bodily movements was. The length of the steps taken, the strength of the bounce, the coordination of body movements, and so on, make the entire movement flow smoothly, making oneself a parkour athlete. These parkour movements are like eating, and Luo Guang can be said to move freely. On the way to the emergency exit, Luo Guang, who was covering his mouth, scanned the nearby fire cabinet and stopped. Luo Guang's goal is not to use the equipment inside to extinguish the fire. Luo Guang picked up the nearby fire extinguisher and smashed the rusty lock on it, then picked up the beloved fire axe inside. Luo Guang glanced at the slight rust on the axe, and with his right hand holding the handle close to the axe, he adjusted his body's center of gravity and continued running towards the emergency passage. The road went smoothly without encountering any zombies, and I don't know if the others in the apartment had already escaped. Without being blocked by fire or collapsed cement blocks, Luo Guang followed the fire escape ladder and arrived at the back street of the apartment. Without the thick smoke, Luo Guang took a deep breath of fresh air mixed with a hint of garbage odor, pulled out the fire axe inserted on the left side of his backpack, and looked around. A red-eyed little mouse was startled by the falling from the sky Luo Guang. In a panic, it ran to a large garbage bin and stood up. Looking at Luo Guang, it waved its small paws arrogantly, threatening him not to approach it. The red-eyed mouse still maintains its timid and afraid nature, so its intimidation was naturally ignored by Luo Guang, and the little mouse immediately ran away towards the distance. After confirming the safety of the surroundings, Luo Guang listened to the sound inside the building. There were still some sounds of fighting and destruction inside the apartment building, which confirmed what Luo Guang had thought before. The sound insulation in the room he woke up in was too good. The cries for help, the sound of flames burning, and the sound of car alarms were mixed together, hovering over the vast raccoon market, adding a touch of musical color to this hell. Taking advantage of the temporary safety in the alley, Luo Guang began to think about the next step. What he needs now is weapons, a map of Raccoon City, and some supplies. Based on all his current items, Luo Guang determines his primary goal. In the face of such disasters and difficulties, the vast majority of people will choose to escape from dangerous places. Naturally, at this point, either the road was congested with cars or the entire line could not pass due to a traffic accident. However, in either case, for Luo Guang, the only way to escape from Raccoon City that he had temporarily thought of was the following options. The first is to walk to the outskirts of the city and then use other means of transportation such as cars, motorcycles, or bicycles to leave the affected area of the nuclear explosion. The second option is the underground railway in Raccoon City, or it can be left through the underground transportation system of Amber Company. Luo Guang remembered the Amber Company ID card he was carrying, and he didn't know if he could use the Amber Company's underground transportation system to escape. This was Luo Guang's third choice. Although Luo Guang only had a rough understanding of the plot of the Resident Evil game and did not remember many details, he still remembered that since the Raccoon City incident, the Amber Company had started to decline, and within a few years, the huge amber company had been taken apart by other capital. In addition, Luo Guang has no loyalty to Amber Company, so he has long planned to abandon or simply use this identity in his heart. Breaking free from the shackles of Amber's identity is also a relatively important thing in Luo Guang's view, but don't be bitten by zombies and shot dead by Amber's enemies. Moreover, as a relatively easy-going person, it would be great to be a lovely commoner and not participate in those damn struggles. Luo Guang was thinking this in his heart when he suddenly heard a highly destructive voice approaching at lightning speed. With a loud bang, a pretty figure wearing a blue bra top rushed out of the apartment next to him. Before Luo Guang could see who it was, there was another loud bang. The back door of the apartment suddenly collapsed, with a cloud of dust carrying sparks. After that, a figure waved its hand to sweep away the dust, coughed a few times, and was about to get up. Turning its head, it saw Luo Guang with a surprised expression on his face. At this moment, Luo Guang roared in his heart, "I don't want to have any relationship with the protagonist group, these celestial demons and lonely stars." But in fact, Luo Guang did a good job on the surface and changed the fire axe he was holding in his right hand to his left. He kindly extended his right hand to help the other person sitting on the ground stand up, and with a joyful expression of seeing survivors, he said happily, "Hello, my name is Luo Guang. It's really great, finally seeing a living person in such a day." Judging from the opponent's fleeing posture and the accompanying chaotic smashing sounds, it is highly likely that the beautiful woman in front of them is Gil Valentian, who was originally monitored by Luo Guang. "I'm Gil Valentian, just call me Gil," said Luo Guang from the other person's mouth, without realizing his expected name. Before Luo Guang could answer, Gil continued, "It's not safe here now. Let's get out of here quickly. Is it something that just chased you?" Luo Guang looked a bit timid and said, "I heard a loud fight sound. And then you seemed to be avoiding something and slammed out the door." Originally, Gil, who wanted to ask Luo Guang why he knew he was being pursued by the tyrant, heard what Luo Guang said behind him, only then did he realize how loud the fighting between the tyrant and himself was. "That's the biological weapon tyrant of Umbrella Company. The specifics are long, so let's leave here first." Although the goddess of revenge is now under the rubble, Gil does not believe that this will crush the tyrant's biological weapon to death, so he urged Luo Guang to leave this land of trouble first. "Okay, I'm going to find some weapons and food supplies. Do you know where these things are nearby?" Luo Guang scratched his head with embarrassment and said, "I just came to this Raccoon City not long ago. And then I encountered this kind of thing. I only traveled to this Raccoon City over an hour ago, so naturally, this is not a lie, and it can also explain why I don't know the way." Gil heard Luo Guang's words and looked down at the empty holster on his leg, with no weapons on his body. He nodded and recognized Luo Guang's current goal in his heart. It is indeed necessary to find some weapons now, so that when encountering a tyrant again, one will not be powerless to fight back. At this moment, Gil thought of the S he had received before tea. The ARS teammate called and said to Luo Guang, "Come with me, I know a place." After speaking, Gil turned around and left. Luo Guang nodded obediently and glanced at the pile of rubble at the door. "There is currently no movement, feel a little more at ease. Don't wake up so fast, at least wait for Gil to take me to get supplies and equipment first." Thinking so, Luo Guang quickly grabbed the fire axe and followed Gil Valentian, who was looking back to confirm if Luo Guang had followed. Meow modified. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Supply and Separation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Supply and Separation. Following Gil, who was familiar with the terrain route, Luo Guang finally ran out of the complex alley. Outside the alley, there was already a hellish scene, with groups of zombies wandering in this living hell, searching for the taste of food and then rushing forward, devouring everything. As Luo Guang thought, Gil has extensive experience dealing with zombies. In just a few seconds, Gil discovered that he could sneak past, just quietly solving a few zombies blocking his way. So without disturbing other zombies, Gil borrowed Luo Guang's telescopic dagger and took Luo Guang along the path formed in his mind to solve the zombies blocking the way one by one. At first, when Gil asked Luo Guang to borrow a weapon, he actually wanted to borrow Luo Guang's fire axe. But Luo Guang didn't know if he had any stereotypes about the Resident Evil game series. When Gil asked him to borrow a weapon, his first reaction was to give Gil his retractable dagger and say, "This is more appropriate." Gil took the retractable dagger, popped out the blade, and confirmed that it was not a small thug's toy. He nodded at Luo Guang and said, "Indeed, this weapon is more suitable for our current situation." Luo Guang's original intention was that this weapon was suitable for Gil, but Gil clearly misunderstood Luo Guang's original intention. Gil refers to the fact that the zombie did not detect the two of them, so using a dagger that is labor-saving, fast in attack, and can also be used for stabbing is indeed better than a fire axe that can only be used for chopping. Seeing Luo Guang's face as he experienced a biochemical crisis for the first time, Gil couldn't help but think of how he looked when he first encountered a biochemical event. However, Luo Guang did a good job in controlling the details, and as expected, the vast majority of people who have survived to this day are not solely relying on luck. After a moment of thought, Gil began to teach Luo Guang some knowledge on how to deal with zombies and said, "Luo, you can follow me later, pay attention to your feet, keep quiet, and see how I deal with these zombies." Luo Guang nodded in response and thought, is Gil preparing for on-site teaching? Luo Guang is also very interested in this, after all, he only had a theoretical foundation before. Compared to Gil, who has fought with real weapons and biological weapons, he is now just talking on paper. For example, everyone knows that the heads of these zombies are weak points. However, in reality, the skull on the recently mutated zombie, as the hardest part of the human body, also provides considerable protection for the zombie's brain. After being infected with the T virus, this skull will only become harder. Leaving aside instances of pistol bullets getting stuck on the skull, blindly stabbing with a small knife will only miss the opportunity to eliminate zombies. Therefore, Luo Guang also put aside his other thoughts and followed Gil to study seriously, such as how to avoid wandering zombies, how to deal with zombies with one strike, and so on, all of which inspired Luo Guang. Passing through 2 streets and an alley unscathed, Luo Guang and Gil arrived at a small alley. After observing the walls, they said to Luo Guang, "This is S.T.R.S safe house." After speaking, Gil pulled out a brick from the outer wall, took out the key from inside, and opened a door in the alley. Gil and Luo Guang had just entered when they heard a man's voice. Luo Guang gently closed the door and turned to look inside. A man wearing a yellow warning suit was sitting on the sofa, with several pistols on the table in front of him. Luo Guang keenly noticed that the firearm in the opponent's hand was pointing towards him with a hint of uncertainty, while Luo Guang appeared unaware and calmly huddled behind Gil. "This is Brad Vickers," Gil said before introducing Luo Guang to Brad. "This is Luo Guang." "Gil." The man named Brad spoke again, but this time there was a hint of dissatisfaction in his tone and suspicion in his eyes as he looked at Luo Guang. "Hello, Vickers." Luo Guang took the initiative to greet Brad. Brad didn't respond and turned to continue tinkering with the firearms on the table. "Sorry, Brad has been going through a lot lately, so he's a bit suspicious. Like me, he's also from STRS." Gil saw that the two seemed to be struggling, so he quickly came out to make up for it. Her own identity was mentioned before entering the alley. After all, the place where Gil brought Luo Guang belongs to STARS's safe house, of course, must first tell Luo Guang about his own ST identity of ARS. "Former STRS, Brad corrected with a slightly displeased tone, but the displeasure in his tone seemed to be directed towards someone who was not present. Although the police station still has STARS's office, but after the Yangguan incident, the entire the ARS team has gone their separate ways. Plus The members of ARS did not follow instructions and were still investigating the situation with the Umbrella Company, which resulted in the cancellation of the establishment by the police chief. Gil shrugged and said, "It's not time for casual conversation now. Are the weapons we mentioned earlier ready?" This St. The safe house of ARS was prepared under Brad's leadership after the Yangguan incident. It took Brad over a month to build such a safe house in the Raccoon City ruled by the Amber Company. In order to avoid alerting the Amber Company, Brad had to carefully avoid people monitoring him to purchase weapons, so the weapons in this safe room are mostly small personal weapons, mainly pistols and melee weapons. In Luo Guang's line of sight, no other types of firearms were found except for handguns. Brad lifted his chin and pointed to the other side of the safe house. Gil looked in the direction pointed by Brad's chin and saw a small and exquisite G19 pistol, a G18 pistol, and several magazines filled with bullets placed on a wooden table next to a dark green gun cabinet. "Thank you," Gil said casually and walked over directly. The weapons on the table were all prepared by Gil to Brad, so Gil didn't think carefully and tied a tactical belt around his waist. He then inserted the weapons and ammunition on the table into the belt one by one, and finally inserted the G19 pistol into the holster in his thigh. "Luo, thank you for your knife." Gil handed back the retractable dagger that Luo Guang had lent her to open the way. "You're welcome, Gil. I've learned a lot by following you," Luo Guang quickly waved his hand and replied. Gil understood that Luo Guang was referring to the technique of killing zombies, and couldn't help but marvel at Luo Guang's talent for learning. Gil confirmed several times with his spare light the situation of Luo Guang following behind him, and it can be seen that although his movements are still somewhat immature, in his opinion, he has barely passed in terms of covert actions. In order to avoid being suspected of being shot by Brad, Luo Guang followed Gil to the table. Upon hearing Gil's words, Luo Guang leaned his fire axe aside, took the retractable dagger with both hands, and put it back in his pocket. He then heard Gil say, "There are still many guns here, you should choose one too. Do you have any gun experience?" Luo Guang didn't tell Gil that he still had a gun hidden on him. He shook his head and said, "I don't know much about guns." "Gil, time is running out," Brad reminded when he saw that Gil and Luo Guang seemed to be starting to talk. As he spoke, Brad walked directly to the middle of the two and said, "As long as the gun can be fired." As he spoke, Brad looked up and down at Luo Guang, then focused on his hand's shape. Without seeing any calluses, he turned around and took a G17 pistol and several paired magazines from the gun stand, placing them on the table in front of Luo Guang. He said, "You just need this one. It's easy to maintain, of good quality, with few malfunctions, 17 rounds per magazine, which meets your needs. Can you load bullets?" "I probably know how to do it, but I haven't actually practiced it." It seems that Brad is the kind of person who is cold on the outside and hot on the inside, Luo Guang thought so. In order to match his character, he quickly stated that he had never been under pressure. Sigh. Brad sighed and took out several boxes of 9mm bullets from under the gun stand. While pressing down on the bullets, he began teaching Luo Guang how to use the G17 pistol. And Gil on the side glanced at Brad, smiled, and opened another cabinet under the gun turret. After a few glances, he took out a short knife from inside. I don't know where Brad got it, and there is no relevant brand logo on the short knife, so the system cannot determine which brand of weapon it is based on the database, and naturally cannot provide relevant weapon parameters. Gil did not ask Brad to prepare the knives for himself. These knives were kept here by Brad as a precaution, so they were not placed on the table in front of Gil. Close combat is relatively not good for Gil, so he doesn't have any special preferences. However, after going through this journey just now, Gil still decided to bring a knife for close combat. He can't deal with tyrant-type biochemical weapons, so bullying small zombies is still good. Gil, who was ready to go, was about to ask Brad some questions. Dong dong dong, a rhythmic and oppressive voice appeared in the direction of the door where Luo Guang and his companions entered, and Luo Guang's first reaction was that the goddess of revenge was chasing after him. At this moment, Luo Guang couldn't care too much. He used both hands and directly picked up the G17 pistol and a box of 9mm bullets that had already been loaded into a magazine on the table in front of him. Then, he brushed away from the direction of the entrance door and quickly asked, "Which is the back door?" In addition to the blue rusty iron door that came in, there were also two doors inside the house, one red and one black, both of which were not labeled. Luo Guang didn't want to choose the wrong door, which would waste important time. When he opened it, he found it was the bathroom. Black door. Brad also heard the sound outside the door and naturally understood the identity of the unwelcome guest outside. He had also been pursued by the goddess of revenge before, and after successfully escaping the enemy, he immediately found a way to contact Gil to gather in this safe house and then flee Raccoon City. Brad quickly reacted to Luo Guang's behavior and shouted at Gil and Luo Guang. Brad, who had once abandoned Gil and others for fear of zombies and fled by helicopter, had a hint of determination in his eyes. "I've succeeded once, and this time I can do it." Brad cheered for himself in his heart. Even with Gil, Brad doesn't think that relying solely on his own weapons here can solve the Avengers. Don't think that the tall body of the Avengers would make them lose their agility. Brad initially thought of escaping to avoid the pursuit of the Avengers, but failed. No matter how he escaped, the goddess of revenge would always find him, and at that time Brad himself had not yet recovered the lost energy. In the end, Brad unleashed a great will to survive and fought against the goddess of revenge. Finally, by detonating the explosives found by the police, the goddess of revenge successfully suspended her activities. At this point, there was still a bit of explosives left, and some more powerful weapons were missing, so Brad took the remaining explosives to a safe house. Therefore, Brad is not foolishly considering sacrificing himself to delay the enemy at this moment. As for Luo Guang, he is not the target of the goddess of revenge. When encountering such an unbeatable biochemical weapon, he will naturally choose to escape. Therefore, Brad does not care about Luo Guang's need to run away, which is human nature. Brad understood the question of why Luo Guang reacted so quickly. Because Luo Guang was brought by Gil, it is highly likely that he has encountered a tyrant, which can explain why Luo Guang, as a commoner, had such a strong reaction when he heard the footsteps. Gil saw that Brad, who had left everyone to escape in the Yangguan incident, wanted to cover himself and Luo Guang for the first time. His red lips parted slightly, but in the end, he still didn't say anything. Time flies, and Gil twisted his head before leaving the safe house with Luo Guang. Upon hearing Brad's words, Luo Guang immediately ran towards the black door, propped up his left hand, flipped over the sofa, flew over the smooth table, and rolled around on the ground to relieve his stress before quickly reaching the black door. In order to prevent the door from opening and killing, Luo Guang forcefully opened the door, aimed the gun first, and then poked his head out to quickly confirm whether there were any zombies in ambush. Safe. After confirming safety, Luo Guang immediately turned back to confirm the situation. Brad's roar caught the attention of the goddess of revenge, and without hesitation, he raised his two guns and kept pulling the trigger. Since the mission target is anxiously dying, the goddess of revenge will naturally not let go of the S, in front of her TARS member, with his left hand protecting his head and eyes, and his right shoulder facing in the direction of Brad who had not escaped, took a step and rushed over. Luo Guang did not stay for long. After confirming that the goddess of revenge did not target himself and Gil, he quickly called Gil to leave. However, just a few steps away from the safe house, Gil spoke to Luo Guang and said, "The target of this tyrant is likely me. If you follow me, it will become even more dangerous." Gil originally wanted to ask Brad about the tyrant-type biochemical weapon chasing him. Perhaps it was just a woman's intuition, but Gil felt that when the tyrant crashed into the safe house, his gaze was instantly on him. Most zombies move slowly, as long as they avoid close-range attacks, it's not a big deal compared to the threat of the tyrant tracking behind them all the way. Gil thought to himself that after careful consideration, he would take the initiative to take separate actions. Luo Guang pretended not to understand the meaning of the tyrant, but time was tight, so he could only advise simply, "Tyrant. But no matter what, there will always be a response when we act together." Gil was determined and shook his head. After a few words, he clarified his guess and told Luo Guang that after seeking help from the police station, he ran towards the safe house without looking back. Luo Guang extended his hand without holding the gun towards the direction Gil was leaving. "Wait." Before the words could be finished, a roar came from behind. Luo Guang didn't pause for a moment. When he heard a sound coming from behind, he drew his knife and pressed it, popping out a sharp dagger. He turned around and looked at the zombie walking slowly in front of him, with its body weighing less than 2 pounds. Perhaps feeling a little annoyed by Gil's return to die, Luo Guang moved his wrist and quickly took a few steps towards the direction of the zombie. He approached the zombie and dodged the anticipated attack. In front of the advancing zombie's eyes, there was a retractable dagger that had been on standby for a long time. "Insert and turn your wrist." Then, with his right hand holding the gun, he gently pushed the zombie aside with the muzzle and drew out a retractable dagger. The zombie collapsed with a loud bang and fell behind Luo Guang, who was walking out of the alley. In Resident Evil 3, Brad didn't actually grow up like in the remake, he was still as timid. "After all, I was selected by STARS, people can't be too bad," and Brad came back to rescue his teammates after escaping from the Yokoyama incident, so we chose a remastered image here. Finally, thank you for Tai's recommended ticket, meow. Modified. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. RPD Youth Activity Center. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 RPD Youth Activities Center. Finally, there's no need to pretend anymore. Looking at another zombie walking unsteadily towards Luo Guang's side, Luo Guang put down his disguise and thought of something else. Although the system did not speak, Luo Guang vaguely felt that the system was exercising the right to silence, rather than not responding to his own words. The sound of battle began to faint in the alley behind him, pulling Luo Guang's thoughts back to more urgent matters. Facing the zombie in front of him, Luo Guang simply kicked the zombie's feet and knees, then wrapped around the zombie's back and inserted the knife into it from the position of his ear. As long as you learn the skills, dealing with these unintelligent and less skilled zombies on point 1 will become very simple. I am becoming more and more proficient. With this thought in mind, Luo Guang quickly left the alley and then hid behind a broken-down car, looking ahead. According to Luo Guang's original plan, after replenishing his supplies of food and water, as well as possible weapons and ammunition, he must seize the time to escape from the Raccoon City that is about to be flattened. Firearms and weapons are designed to deal with biological and chemical weapons, while food and water are prepared for later escape from Raccoon City. Originally just a border town, Raccoon City, surrounded by mountains on 3 sides and only one side leading to the outside world, was chosen by Amber Company to invest huge amounts of money in modernization construction, making Raccoon City like a Dragon Gate, a well-equipped industrial city with a permanent population of over 100,000. In order to ensure the confidentiality of the biochemical virus experiment, Raccoon City is relatively far from other cities. Without food and water, Luo Guang cannot guarantee to be able to support walking to other human settlements. If he is not bitten to death by zombies but instead starves or thirsts, it will be too uncomfortable. Luo Guang is planning for the worst, and escaping from Raccoon City is just a small goal for him now. Built by Brad T. There was food and water in ARS's safe house, but because the goddess of revenge came too quickly, and the food and water shelves were in the opposite direction of the black escape door, they were closer to another red door. Therefore, before Luo Guang could get the food and water, he hurriedly fled the safe house. When Gil decided to separate from him, Luo Guang's words were not intended to persuade Gil. Luo Guang knew the danger of the goddess of revenge, and few people around the protagonist were still alive. With Gil's help, Luo Guang obtained a lot of weapon supplies. As a gesture of gratitude, Luo Guang just wanted to remind Gil to leave Raccoon City as soon as possible. But after the other party finished speaking, they hurriedly ran to the safe house. Depending on the situation, they should go back to help Brad. In the context of the biochemical crisis, Luo Guang naturally did not engage in that kind of shouting behavior, so he was unable to speak out. However, Luo Guang no longer felt that he owed the other party a favor. Now, half of his original plan has been completed, with only food and water left. Thinking so, Luo Guang suddenly realized that he was missing an important item for leaving Raccoon City. A map. Because when Luo Guang came to this world, he did not inherit the memories of the employees of the Amber Company, also known as Luo Guang. His understanding of the terrain, architecture, and other aspects of Raccoon City was blank. Because he did not inherit his memory, even when he met Gil, Luo Guang couldn't help but appreciate the 9-year compulsory education he had received, which allowed him to communicate with each other in English. Speaking of the plan, in order to facilitate finding supplies and leaving Raccoon City, Luo Guang added a new priority goal to his plan, which is to find a map of Raccoon City. Unlike the world where Luo Guang used to be on a mobile phone and could easily access navigation anytime and anywhere, in this era, Luo Guang could only find a paper map. Of course, there are also some electronic map devices, but obviously those things have not yet become popular in this era. Perhaps there may be a location for the Amber Company, but at this point, Luo Guang doesn't know where to find the Amber Company's facilities. Therefore, considering that most local households do not have local city maps, Luo Guang targeted public or administrative facilities that may have maps of Raccoon City for tourism purposes. Secondly, Luo Guang can also go to the subway station to see if he can determine the direction and location based on the route map inside the subway station. At this time, Luo Guang had no map and could only search for his destination based on the road signs on the roadside. After leaving the alley, Luo Guang only had the only road sign in his sight, and the information written on it was RPD. The Youth Activity Center is exactly what Luo Guang needs, and there should be a name for a place based on the size of the signboard, but it has been covered by black and red liquid. RPD is the abbreviation for the Raccoon Police Department. The PD Youth Activity Center should be a public facility similar to the Youth Palace, so there may still be some supplies there. Luo Guang thought so, but at this moment, under the road sign, he went to RP. The road to the Youth Activity Center was blocked by dozens of zombies. If he were to use a handgun, Luo Guang still had confidence in being able to solve it. However, now Luo Guang misses the fire axe he left behind. That thing can split open a sky cover in one go. As long as the distance is controlled and the one-to-many is split into multiple one-to-one, using the fire axe to deal with this situation is still good. In any case, the attack distance is much farther than the extendable dagger in his hand, which is more conducive to Luo Guang pulling the zombies and breaking them one by one. Fortunately, when Luo Guang arrived in this Raccoon City, it was already September 28th. After the explosive operation commanded by the deputy director on September 24th, a large number of zombies attracted by the sound were concentrated and eliminated, which made the streets of Raccoon City less crowded today. Otherwise, Luo Guang would not have had the idea of fighting zombies skilled in crowd tactics. According to the signs, turn right at the intersection in front of you and enter Flower Street. RPD. The Youth Activity Center should be nearby, so if you want to arrive at as soon as possible PD. For the Youth Activity Center, we need to have a fight with these zombies first. If Luo Guang chooses to fight against dozens of zombies in front of him, it will actually take a lot of time, and it's hard to say what will happen during this period. In addition, as Gil's battle in the alley continues, Luo Guang believes that it is necessary to stay away from here as soon as possible to avoid getting caught up in it. Luo Guang looked left and right, and on the other side of the road, there was a small alley leading in the same direction as RP. The direction of the Youth Activity Center is roughly the same. Quickly, Luo Guang had a decision in his heart and immediately took action. He crossed the road in a few seconds and flashed into the alley. The alley was not affected by the spread of the fire, and garbage could be seen everywhere, but the buzzing of flies could not be heard. Compared to the environment mixed with various sounds on the street, this alley was very quiet, just like before the outbreak of the biological crisis in Raccoon City, quiet and full of crime. Luo Guang held a retractable dagger in his left hand and placed it horizontally in front of his body at a right angle. He held the G17 pistol with only one compatible magazine in his right hand and placed it on his left wrist. In St. When ARS was in the safe house, Luo Guang only had time to pick up the G17 pistol loaded with bullets, as well as a box of 9mm bullets. The box was full and had already been stuffed into his backpack by Luo Guang. The G17 pistol chosen by Brad is indeed suitable for Luo Guang's Asian hand shape. Without the need for special adjustments to the grip, Luo Guang's palm can fit tightly against the grip. However, the short barrel of this G17 pistol worries Luo Guang that its power may not be enough to penetrate zombies whose skulls have not yet softened. There were still street lamps alive in the alley, emitting a faint light, but finally Luo Guang could see things clearly. The system also mentioned in a timely manner that it has a way to improve Luo Guang's photosensitivity, so that he can see clearly in darker places like a cat. However, Luo Guang is concerned about explosions or other reasons that may suddenly cause strong light to harm his eyes, so he temporarily refused the system's help. Walking lightly, sticking to the left wall and passing by a large garbage bin on the right, Luo Guang suddenly turned right and aimed his pistol at the side of the bin. This is the blind spot of Luo Guang's vision. In addition, Luo Guang also noticed black and red marks of blood flowing on the ground, so he had been prepared for them. Ah! What caught Luo Guang's eye was a body that was only half left, with R on the arms of his clothes P.D. The 3-character badge is very prominent and is a police officer from the Raccoon City Police Department. Luo Guang frowned, both regretting the police's plight and feeling uneasy about his inability to determine what biological weapon caused such harm. There was only half of the body left in front of him, as if it had been torn apart by a huge force, but Luo Guang did not see any traces around him, such as claw marks or marks of hitting. Luo Guang exhaled a foul breath. Without gloves or poles, for hygiene reasons, he still didn't consider touching the body to see if there were any weapons or bullets. The body had no weapons in hand, and the police belt didn't know where it had flown. The death of the body only made Luo Guang feel uneasy, and the unknown was the most terrifying. Luo Guang was about to leave this land of right and wrong when something flashed in the afterglow. Being wary of the sudden mutation and explosion of the body, Luo Guang just leaned in a little bit and lay quietly next to the body with a key. Without much thought or some kind of instinct to pick up items when he saw them, Luo Guang quickly reached out to pick up the key, and then quickly withdrew from the body. The body did not suddenly explode, which made Luo Guang breathe a sigh of relief. He reflected on his careless behavior just now. Luo Guang looked at the key in his hand, which had no signs or car logos on it. At the moment, Luo Guang doesn't know what the use of this key is, but after all, it was obtained from the police, and he was about to go to R.P.D. The Youth Activity Center also had contact with the police, so Luo Guang decided to carry the key with him first. After tidying up his mood, Luo Guang took a few more steps forward and arrived at a T-shaped intersection. According to R.P.D. the direction of the Youth Activity Center, Luo Guang needs to turn left. Turning left and right, he glanced at the small alleys on both sides, where zombies were guarding the road. However, the number of zombies was much smaller than on the road. Despite facing the enemy on one side, Luo Guang was still able to solve the problem by pulling and pulling. However, Because there were enemies on both sides, Luo Guang had to constantly pay attention to the zombies wandering aimlessly in the other alleyway. After checking his belongings again, Luo Guang exchanged weapons on his left and right hands. He held a retractable dagger in his right hand and moved his wrist. At the moment when the zombie in the nearest left alley turned its back to Luo Guang rushed out. There were many miscellaneous items on the ground, such as discarded paper, so instead of constantly paying attention to the situation under his feet and touching the back of the zombie, Luo Guang chose to sprint more directly. When the nearest zombie heard footsteps and turned his head, a retractable dagger accurately inserted into the zombie's eye socket. As before, he turned the dagger to ensure damage to the zombie's brain and then withdrew it. Without stopping, while the first zombie was still in the process of falling, Luo Guang had already selected the next target and kicked the left zombie onto the zombie behind him. Then, the reaction force tilted back to avoid the zombie rushing from the right. At the same time, his retracted foot launched another attack, crossing the path of the right zombie's attack and tripping the right zombie to the ground. With one strong foot, Luo Guang broke the vertebrae at the neck of the zombie on the right side. He took a few steps forward and stepped on the zombie that was still struggling to stand up while falling together. His right hand made 2 consecutive attempts to deal with the 2 zombies. After thinking for a moment, Luo Guang turned around and repaired the zombie with its mouth constantly open and closed, which had been crushed by Luo Guang's neck vertebrae. At the same time, he used his spare light to observe the situation of the zombie on the other side of the alley. Perhaps it was because the alley was narrow and the tall walls on both sides allowed the sound to spread further, while the zombies on the other side of the alley noticed the situation on Luo Guang's side and were stumbling towards him. After confirming that the zombies on the other side would not pose a threat to him, Luo Guang was about to walk out of the alley along the way. Adapter, the destination is on the right side. Hey! Luo Guang walked to a T-shaped intersection again, went straight and turned right. Suddenly, he heard the sound of the system in his mind and said something similar to navigation voice. He was momentarily stunned. Under the system's reminder, Luo Guang saw AR pasted on the wall of the right turn alley PD. The guiding principle of the Youth Activity Center. This brand appeared in the afterglow of Luo Guang, but Luo Guang did not notice it. Instead, the careful system noticed this brand and knew that Luo Guang was planning to leave the alley all the way, so it was only then that a reminder was issued. Thank you. As someone who is polite, civilized, and creates a new atmosphere, Luo Guang thanked the system and turned right into the alley on the other side. This alley is much more spacious than before, with no clutter on either side, and can accommodate a car to enter. Surprisingly, Luo Guang noticed that the youth palace was always on the roadside, which was different from his own impression. RPD. The Youth Activity Center is actually surrounded by other buildings. Unlike other faint streetlights in the alley, RP. There are 2 bright wall lamps at the entrance of the Youth Activity Center, which caught Luo Guang's attention at once. Looking at the sign above the closed door with the words, RPD Youth Activity Center, Luo Guang nodded silently. It's time to go somewhere. Thank you for the recommended ticket from the big brother in the pavilion, meow. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Survivors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Survivors. Luo Guang did not rush in, but first observed around to obtain more information. There were no bloodstains or corpses scattered on the surrounding roads or walls, nor any shells scattered on the ground, indicating that there had been no combat at the entrance. Luo Guang inferred from this that after the disaster, no one should have come here to avoid zombies, or to be conservative, this place has not yet been attacked by zombies. But this is just the outside situation, RP. It is possible that the situation inside the Youth Activity Center may already be a purgatory, so Luo Guang did not easily let go of his guard, but instead tried to push open the door more cautiously. Unexpectedly unable to push open, the door tightened. At this moment, Luo Guang thought of the key he had found before, and with a feeling of not losing out even by trying it out, he changed his weapons on both sides of his hand. With his left hand, he used his middle finger, ring finger, and tail finger to grip the retractable dagger, while his index finger and thumb held the key and inserted it into the keyhole of the door. The size was suitable, but Luo Guang did not immediately turn the key. His right hand, holding the gun, was close to his waist and slightly away from the door. After turning to the right about 30 degrees, he aimed the muzzle of the pistol at the gap that was about to open. This action was not taught systematically, but learned by Luo Guang while watching movies and TV shows. After watching the movie, Luo Guang also checked the authenticity and practicality of this action. The purpose of retracting the pistol and keeping it close to the waist is to prevent the extended pistol from being taken away by someone. At close range, the pistol that is close to the waist can also remain stable and provide sufficient strike to enemies at close range. Because the pistol is attached to his waist, Luo Guang's action is not aimed at zombies, but at humans, so there is no need to aim at the head. Ready, Luo Guang slowly turned the key. With a click, the lock of the door was opened by Luo Guang. Without pushing open the door, Luo Guang first listened to the sound and confirmed that there were no other sounds coming from behind or around the door before gently pushing open RPD. The entrance to the Youth Activity Center. The building was still quiet, except for the creaking sound of the door being pushed. Luo Guang didn't rush in and opened the exposed field of view along the door, aiming his gun at it. There are probably people, but there are no zombies, Luo Guang judged in his heart based on what he saw. The lights inside the house are brightly lit, so someone must have come and turned them on. That person may still be hiding inside the building. Not turning off the lights to hide is because humans need more light than zombies, which means this light only protects against zombies. Otherwise, the pitch-black area suddenly brightens up, which can instantly distract people and prevent them from immediately responding to attacks. At the same time, Luo Guang looked all the way and, like outside, there were no signs of combat. It can be temporarily confirmed that there has not been any zombie huohua here. The lobby is generally safe. Luo Guang did not relax his guard and quickly dodged to enter, turning his body 180 degrees and aiming his gun behind the door. Safety. After confirming his safety, Luo Guang pulled out the door key and flashed into the building. Because he had developed good habits, Luo Guang habitually locked the door. Coming to RPD, Luo Guang at the front desk of the Youth Activity Center lobby was scanning the desk for maps or other useful materials when he suddenly heard a noise, like the sound of glass shattering. Luo Guang immediately became vigilant. Although the world is not the end of the world and human moral concepts have not yet collapsed, there are also good and bad people. In this Raccoon City, who says zombies are definitely more terrifying than humans? Don't forget that this biochemical crisis is a man-made disaster. Having experienced various games, movies, and novels, Luo Guang naturally gained a deep understanding of the true story. At this moment, he did not feel excited about encountering potential survivors. Speaking of which, it's better to meet people from the main character group, at least most of them are Wei Guangjing characters. Luo Guang thought to himself, pointing his gun in the direction of the sound and listening attentively to the noise. The hall was once again quiet, and Luo Guang remained calm. He did not easily believe that it was a mouse hitting a glass and making a sound. To be honest, unless the mouse panicked, Luo Guangchang had never seen many times when he was so old that he was knocked down by a mouse. At this moment, this situation is too coincidental, so Luo Guang will not relax his guard. The other party made a noise and lost the opportunity, but Luo Guang was not familiar with this place, so he chose a corner position and hid behind the pillar, exposing his small body to aim at the channel in the direction of the sound. Perhaps it was because he fell into silence after being exposed, causing him to feel uneasy. The other party was the first to lose their composure. Not long after, Luo Guang heard the sound of opening the door, and then it rang out. Frank. The voice was a bit distant, and Luo Guang couldn't hear it very accurately. He didn't know if it was a man or a woman, so he could only barely hear clearly that he was speaking a person's name. Frank. Luo Guang remembered that half of the body, which held the key to this place. It was very likely that he had met the people here and had to temporarily leave in search of support or for other reasons, ultimately losing his life. After thinking for a moment, the other party's situation seemed harmless and had been in a passive defensive state. Therefore, Luo Guang aimed at the channel through which the sound was emitted and slowly advanced. Anyone here? Luo Guang didn't want to be treated as a zombie and shot dead directly, so he replied. The other party did not respond immediately, but their first reaction was to close the door. Who is it? The voice became even more unclear through the door. Fortunately, Luo Guang had already walked into the passage, so he didn't miss the sound. Survivor. Luo Guang felt that there was no identity more fitting than this word at this moment. The other party's situation should be the same as oneself. Luo Guang's words will make the other party feel that Luo Guang is in the same position as oneself, which can better bring both sides closer. How do you have the key here? The other party was still asking, perhaps because they were inside the room and worried that Luo Guang might not be able to hear clearly, so the other party increased the volume a bit. The sound insulation inside the room is good, but the sound that Luo Guang heard outside the room is still relatively low, so he needs to listen carefully. Unconsciously, Luo Guang had already touched the door outside the room where the other party was hiding, and when the other party spoke again, Luo Guang quickly found the room. In order to make the other party feel that Luo Guang was not getting close, Luo Guang's voice was slightly reduced as he said, "There is a police officer who has been injured and passed away." Before Luo Guang could finish speaking, the other party opened the door and as soon as they came out, they collided with Luo Guang who was waiting for a rabbit at the door. Luo Guang had sharp eyes and quick hands, as if by coincidence, he hit the opponent's right wrist with his hand, shooting down the pistol he held in his hand and dropping it to the ground. Luo Guang did not bend down to pick up the opponent's pistol and point it at them, but instead stood there, intentionally or unintentionally aiming at them with his own pistol. Probably hitting their head, the other person covered their head with one hand and propped up the ground with the other, looking nervous. They looked up at Luo Guang and glanced at the pistol pointing at them. Just as they were about to raise their pistol, they realized that their hands were already empty. "Do you know the police officer who passed away?" Luo Guang saw the other person looking at him with a nervous and fearful expression, knowing that he was intimidated by him, but Luo Guang did not say anything to threaten him. At this point, both sides were not considered enemies, so Luo Guang first mentioned what the other party was concerned about and asked. When the other party heard Luo Guang's question, a hint of anxiety and sadness flashed on their nervous face, and they replied, "He is my brother. Please mourn and understand my caution." Luo Guang put away his weapon. Since the other party didn't seem malicious or threatening, he picked up their pistol but didn't reach out to pull them up. The other person's gaze was fixed on his pistol, about to say something when Luo Guang took a step and said, "Is this your brother's gun?" After picking up the gun, Luo Guang carefully examined it and found that the model was similar to his own gun. The information provided by the system was the Beretta 92FS, which was an improved version of the M92F pistol in Luo Guang's hand. The opponent's gun was engraved with an abbreviation of FK, and when it came to their relationship with the police, it was speculated that it was a weapon given to her by her brother for self-defense. Although it may be false, Luo Guang remembered that the other person's initial voice was Frank, and at that time Luo Guang did not speak. Therefore, the other person's performance in this scene for the zombie was meaningless, and it would attract the zombie while exposing his own position. In addition, the other party rushed out so unprepared after hearing about the police officer's injury, which dispelled Luo Guang's suspicion. "Yes," the other party cautiously replied. Looking at the other person, Luo Guang thought for a moment, closed the safety, and handed the gun to the other person. Perhaps due to the impact of losing loved ones, the other party still had a sad expression on their face. When they took the gun handed over by Luo Guang, they were even more cautious and then held it in their arms. If this were a performance, he would also be a ruthless person who could win a prize. Luo Guang thought to himself and didn't move his gun, but he said, "My name is Luo Guang. I came here to find a map of Raccoon City and other supplies. My name is Lin." After the other person finished speaking her name, she hugged the pistol given to her by her brother tightly and then asked, "Did my brother say anything in the end? How did he get injured?" "I don't know how he got hurt." Luo Guang seemed to be recalling the situation at the time, paused for a moment, but ultimately felt it was better not to tell her about her brother's death. He continued, "He finally trembled and gave me the key, only mentioning the youth center before leaving." "Is that right?" Lin didn't ask back, nor was she questioning Luo Guang's statement. She couldn't help but recall her brother, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Are you the only one here?" Luo Guang frowned. If the girl in front of him couldn't pick herself up, she would be fatal in this hell. "Yes, shortly after those monsters appeared on a large scale, my brother brought me here, and then he went out to search for rescue," the other person said, choking up a bit. "Is there a map of Raccoon City here?" Luo Guang didn't immediately comfort the other person. The other party nodded and told Luo Guang where the map was located. Looking at the girl still sobbing, Luo Guang sighed and encouraged, "Your brother left to protect you. You should live well, this is not to disappoint your brother." Luo Guang didn't turn his back to Lin, instead he looked at her and walked backwards. The map was in the drawer at the front desk. This reminded Lin of how her brother looked at him with reluctance, worried about herself, and slowly left when he went to search for help. Lin understood in her heart that Luo Guang was not her brother, but her feet still involuntarily moved and she couldn't help but shout out the words her brother had not shouted when he left. "Don't leave me." Upon hearing the other person's words, Luo Guang stopped and nodded to signal that they would follow. The two walked back to the front desk side by side. Before Luo Guang could say anything, the other person consciously opened a drawer on the right side of the front desk and took out the map inside. The map is still very new, and under the light, Luo Guang quickly found the way to leave. Lin saw where Luo Guang's finger was placed and asked, "Luo, are you looking for a way to leave Raccoon City?" Yes, Luo Guang did not deny this. It would be even better if the other party had the same thoughts as himself, which means that both parties have a common interest. It is more credible to talk about love at first sight between two unfamiliar men and women than to talk about common interests. The highways and ordinary intercity roads are either blocked by cars or blocked by traffic control. Initially, my brother planned to take me out of Raccoon City and come back here to support me. Lin didn't finish her words, but Luo Guang knew that she meant that the two of them had to return to Raccoon City to seek support because of this. Noticing a certain word in Lin's dialect, Luo Guang asked, "Control. Is it the military?" After wiping her tears, Lin said, "It should be the National Guard. The military order they received was to control the scale of the disaster and wait for the arrival of the regular army. Because they don't know how those monsters appeared, the National Guard dare not let us leave, but let us temporarily return home and wait for the situation to calm down. Later, because there was no news from the city council after giving a speech, my brother wanted to see if he could leave through the police. Can we only take the railway or air route?" Luo Guang abandoned the plan of taking the 11th route and riding a two-wheeled bike and whispered. Although Luo Guang doesn't have a clear understanding of the plot of the Resident Evil, he always has some impression that the main team members mostly left through these two methods. Isn't a certain middle score and female college student driving into Raccoon City? Perhaps some people would say so, but that was on the road to the city, and the two of them took advantage of the gap in the military blockade to enter the city. The two of them, Luo Guang, need to leave Raccoon City and find a car to drive in the opposite direction. They may not even be able to get out of the city, and Luo Guang doesn't want to bet on whether he can successfully find a usable car after walking to the outskirts of Raccoon City. "The subway has a direct route to the outside," Lin said on the side. "Yeah. But the subway train on that route is a dead train. Luo Guang thought so in his heart, but it was not easy to speak directly. But I understand that the subway train was destroyed because it carried Gil, a person being tracked by the goddess of revenge. What if Gil ultimately didn't board the train? Luo Guang suddenly wanted to try and see how big a storm his little butterfly could cause in this Raccoon City. Thank you for your recommended tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Separation and Reunion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Separation and Reunion. Give it a try, Luo Guang muttered to himself in a low voice, feeling a bit uneasy. Luo, what did you just say? Lin saw Luo Guang's mouth move, but she didn't understand what Luo Guang was saying. It's nothing, Luo Guang said to himself in Chinese just now, but this time he returned to English. Let's go to the subway station and take a look. Luo Guang's fingers moved on the map and suddenly stopped at a place. The central subway station in Raccoon City is closest to us. Let's go there and try our luck. Lin nodded without objection. Luo Guang glanced at Lin, who obediently followed his brother's advice and was here. Now he wants to leave. From Lin's perspective, it's not because she has no feelings for her brother, and her previous tears are not fake. My brother has passed away, and if I hide here, I will not be rescued no matter what. Lin has heard of the city council announcement, but she wouldn't believe a word of it. Moreover, the city council did not issue any further announcements afterwards, which convinced Lin that the Raccoon City government was not capable of solving the disaster, so she could only save herself. Lin didn't disobey her brother, but this time, it was Lin who took the lead and lived with her brother. Luo Guang looked at Lin and tightly hugged the pistol left by her brother. Suddenly, he thought of something. Luo Guang then asked, "Do you know how to use a gun?" "My brother has taught me how to use it, but being precise is not very good," Lin said very clearly. "Don't rely on her for shooting. Unless it's an emergency, it's better not to use a gun. Those zombies have good hearing, and their individual combat effectiveness is not strong, but they are also difficult to deal with when they come in large numbers." Luo Guang told Lin some of his own experiences. Although Lin's strength and combat skills cannot be compared to Gil's, as long as the method is appropriate, simple 1.on.1 learning is still easy. Despite that, Luo Guang did not expect the opponent to provide much combat power. Without pulling back, he could provide some other help as long as possible. After all, technical talents always have a place to play. Okay, Lin nodded obediently and asked, "Are we ready to leave?" "Luo, do you want to rest for a while?" "I think it's still safe here for now." "Do you have supplies? Weapons, food, water, etc.?" Luo Guang recalled his initial planned goals. This time, without the involvement of the goddess of revenge, Luo Guang obtained supplies very smoothly. Under Lin's leadership, he smashed a power outage vending machine and harvested a table full of food and drinking water. There was too much to fit, so Luo Guang chose to eat 60% full with Lin first, digest some of the food that couldn't be taken away, and then selectively put the food and drinking water on the table into their respective backpacks and shoulder bags. Lin's shoulder bag is sky blue. Originally, Luo Guang advised Lin to replace it with a larger capacity backpack that wouldn't sway around if she had the opportunity in the future. But when he heard Lin say that the backpack was a birthday gift from her brother, Luo Guang fell silent and didn't continue to persuade her. He just asked Lin to adjust the tension of the shoulder strap of the single shoulder bag, at least to ensure that it didn't affect her escape, and not to sway left and right when she ran. "Although I have traveled to this place full of danger, I still cannot be as ruthless as people in the apocalypse." Watching Lin obediently adjusting the shoulder straps of the backpack in front of him, Luo Guang thought of it this way. It hasn't been long since Luo Guang traveled to this world, and he still carries the 3 good styles of a peaceful era, so he didn't have the idea of leaving the other person behind. However, since the meeting, he has maintained a certain degree of caution and vigilance. After all, just now I said her brother gave me the key. So it seems that his brother asked me to take care of her, isn't it? I'm just lying. Contradictively, Luo Guang looked at Lin, who was adjusting the tightness of his shoulder strap, and found an excuse for his behavior. Just finished eating, it's easy to feel drowsy and not suitable for exercise. After resting for a while, the two of them started taking action. Leave our PD Youth Activity Center, two people walking side by side. Luo Guang did not choose to walk in front of Lin to protect him, but instead separated from Lin by a small distance, showing a mutual cover, in order to take into account the other party's actions. Both of them have not received professional training, so their movements and formations may not seem professional, but this is already the best solution given to Luo Guang by the system. Whether rescuing or abandoning the other party, the system has made analysis plans for Luo Guang. In fact, the system's positioning judgment of Lin is a burden of lacking combat effectiveness and being unable to keep up with Luo Guang's pace. When Luo Guang was resting, it was suggested to let him act alone, which is better than teaming up with a dragging oil bottle. When rejecting the system, Luo Guang said, because the other party has an older brother who works as a police officer, he still has some exercise in his daily life and doesn't look as weak and uncontrollable. The system can only quantify the ability of Luo Guang as the host, but for others, it can only be seen and judged through Luo Guang's eyes, so it can only confirm a rough range. During the meal, Luo Guang showcased Chinese dining culture and chatted with Lin about many things, including the influence of her brother on her. Therefore, in addition to daily exercise, Lin is also studying medicine and has some medical knowledge. Indeed, being bitten by zombies can lead to mutations, which makes existing medical knowledge somewhat inadequate when dealing with zombies. But Luo Guang clearly thought more about it. Nowadays, there are car accident and explosion scenes everywhere in Raccoon City, and it can be said that the environment has become worse. It is possible to be accidentally scratched by sharp objects exposed during walking. Trust between people has not been completely destroyed, but there are still people who want to cause trouble, and there is also the possibility of knife, gun, and bullet injuries. There is a prospective doctor who can make people feel more at ease, Luo Guang convinced. Most of the time during the meal, Lin was talking, and Luo Guang was also happy to become a good listener, which could avoid leaking his own information while obtaining the other person's information. Finally, after Luo Guang rejected the system's suggestion to use Lin as a shield, the system had no choice but to provide suggestions based on Luo Guang's decision. Speaking of Luo Guang and his wife, they had already left the alley and arrived on the street, hiding on both sides of the same scrapped car. Just like what Luo Guang had seen before, it was the same scene of human purgatory. Luo Guang adapted quickly to it without any disgust, making him doubt whether he was a cold-blooded animal. Luo Guang didn't know, but in fact, it was all thanks to the system's adjustment. However, the system did not inform Luo Guang of this matter, nor did it always enable this ability, so Luo Guang didn't notice anything strange. Luo Guang, who was unaware of this, glanced at the situation on Lin's side. Lin frowned and covered her mouth and nose with one hand, seeming to have a slight nausea, but in the end, there was no intense reaction. After more than 10 seconds, although Lin still looked uncomfortable, she finally adjusted and no longer covered her mouth and nose with her hands. This kind of performance made Luo Guang couldn't help but slightly change his view on this girl who always looks like she wants to cry. Lin saw Luo Guang looking at her, shook her head, and made a gesture she had just learned to move forward. Forward, stop, retreat. This is a gesture that Luo Guang learned temporarily by grinding his gun, while Lin, due to his brother's reasons, had also been exposed to it before, so she learned it quickly. However, considering the situation of the two, Luo Guang only chose these 3 simple and useful gestures. Luo Guang nodded and confirmed the situation behind him and on both sides again. There were no zombies on either side, but there were also a considerable number of zombies in the rear. However, they were blocked by 3 vehicles colliding and igniting a large fire. I don't know if there is still a certain instinct, but the zombies on that end are slightly away from the flames. Luo Guang shifted his gaze back to the front. At this moment in the middle of the main road ahead, there is a pile of zombies sitting together to cook, grabbing and tearing with both hands, competing. There are pathways on both sides that can pass through, which are relatively narrow. Isn't this the standard mandatory split action? Luo Guang could tell at a glance that the situation in front of him was the kind of disruptive environment in the game. It is also feasible for two people to walk on one side at the same time, but Luo Guang is worried that when there are zombies lurking ahead and conducting a surprise attack, it will be difficult to avoid someone behind him. Another thing that Luo Guang has always wanted to avoid is exposing his back to Lin, whom he has not known for long. As for letting Lin go ahead, Luo Guang cannot do it, and their relationship is not that kind of up and down relationship, so Luo Guang cannot force Lin to go ahead and clear the way. Let's go around separately. Lin carefully crouched over to Luo Guang and whispered. This flag. For a moment, Luo Guang felt a bit speechless. He couldn't help but think to himself that the people he saw along the way were like NPCs, and he wouldn't do anything that wasn't dangerous, just like Gil going back and competing with the goddess of revenge, which made it difficult for Luo Guang, who had watched many horror movies, to understand. However, Lin's proposal was not bad for Luo Guang, as his initial supply plan had already been completed. It was not as awkward for the other party to think about it. With this thought in his heart, Luo Guang wore a hesitant expression on his face. He hesitated for a while before finally nodding and saying, "Pay attention to safety." After speaking, the two did not have much communication and began to take action. Luo Guang's side went smoothly, and the accident naturally happened to be on Lin's side. Just as Lin was carefully avoiding the scattered car parts on the ground, a zombie hiding under the car suddenly reached out and grabbed Lin's foot as it was about to land. Because Lin was already paying attention to the situation on the ground, she reacted quickly and stepped forward a short distance, successfully avoiding the grab. However, after landing, due to excessive forward force, Lin's body shook and her palms slapped against the car door. I don't know if the car was thin, but the sound was unexpectedly loud, as if time had stopped. Both Luo Guang and Lin's movements stopped. Disrupted from their appetite for food, the zombies who were indulging in eating and drinking received a signal to add food. They shook their bodies and stood up, instinctively following the direction of the sound, looking towards Lin with pale eyes. Seeing the zombie being attracted by Lin, Luo Guang did not speak, but observed the other person's reaction. Lin couldn't help but feel nervous and stunned when she saw many zombies looking at her. Damn it, Luo Guang cursed softly. Run quickly, gather at the subway station. After shouting at Lin, Luo Guang finally gave up his kindness and ran away. After being roared by Luo Guang, Lin finally woke up from fear. Looking at the zombies attracted by Luo Guang's roar, she also knew that she had implicated Luo Guang. Due to the poor road conditions, Luo Guang focused his attention on his feet and did not turn back to confirm the situation. However, he vaguely heard Lin's response, and it was likely that the other party did not stand still any longer and began to escape. As long as they are not surrounded, most types of zombies are relatively easy to deal with, and Lin's position happens to have a car grill blocking the zombies eating in the middle of the road, so Lin's chances of successfully escaping are not small. Without much entanglement with the zombie, Luo Guang kicked the zombie in the way to the side, not giving a single glance. He then bent down to avoid the zombie's waving hands and crossed over. The alley on the right. The system that recorded the map of Raccoon City through Luo Guang's eyes navigated for him. Luo Guang did not slow down, turned right, dodged the attack from ahead, and ran into an alley. Probably because the main road was quite lively, Luo Guang noticed that there were always very few zombies in the alley. Without encountering many obstacles, after climbing over a wall, Luo Guang completely shook off the zombies chasing behind him. If it's the era of traffic before time travel, how could I have gained a lot of fans in this parkour collection? Seeing that he had rid himself of the enemy and had climbed over the wall without any zombies lurking him, Luo Guang slightly relaxed his tense nerves and let his thoughts wander. Just as Luo Guang wanted to take a break while he was temporarily safe, a loud voice suddenly rang out, and Luo Guang faintly heard a familiar scream. Luo Guang, holding a G17 pistol, carefully left the alley where he was located. As soon as he left the alley, he happened to see a pretty lady wearing a blue top with a gray head and face rolling on the ground several times. Luo. After rolling a few laps and coughing a few times, Gil, who was about to get up, saw Luo Guang and was a bit surprised. Luo Guang was about to answer when he was interrupted by a furious roar that didn't save face. This time Luo Guang heard very clearly the meaning of this roar. STRS. Thank you for recommending the ticket *, end of this chapter. Chapter 7. The Goddess of Revenge in the First Battle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The Goddess of Revenge in the First Battle STRS. As expected by Luo Guang, the target of the tyrant named Goddess of Revenge was S, who had participated in the Yangguan incident T members of the ARS team. And because most of the S who survived the Yangguan incident T, the ARS members have left Raccoon City, and the first thing to bear the brunt is that they have stayed in Raccoon City to secretly investigate Gil and Brad of Umbrera after the Yangguan incident. In addition to killing people to silence them, S, who had previously defeated the tyrant of Yangguan T. The members of the ARS team are also the best test subjects for the Avengers developed by the European Division. This is an opportunity for researchers from the European Division of Amber Corporation to prove themselves more powerful and reliable than William Birkin and Albert Wisk from the Aker Institute in the Americas. Perhaps because Gil called out to Luo Guang, the Goddess of Revenge immediately identified him as Gil's teammate, so her eyes flickered and she included Luo Guang in the attack. I saw that the left hand of the Goddess of Revenge had transformed into a cluster of tentacles. As she extended her left hand, her tentacles shot at Luo Guang and Gil like long spears. Shit! Luo Guang, who had originally planned to pretend to be afraid and run to the side to watch the play, didn't want to take action to avoid being attacked and cursed angrily. When Luo Guang's moan echoed in the air, he was already a lazy donkey rolling and avoiding the rapid attack of the Goddess of Revenge. As Luo Guang was about to squat and launch a counterattack, he involuntarily leaned towards his side and lay on the ground, narrowly avoiding a sweep from the newly pierced tentacles of the Goddess of Revenge. Luo Guang looked at the banana peel on the ground. While squatting, he happened to step on it, and his foot slipped, causing his body to suddenly lose balance. Fortunately, he avoided this attack. Although Gil seemed to be fighting back with a lively appearance after being hit and rolled several times by the Avengers, Luo Guang didn't want to try how strong the Avengers' attack was. The Goddess of Revenge wants to first solve the seemingly weak Luo Guang and bring the situation back to a 1-on-1 relationship with Gil. Because the tentacles were sweeping towards Luo Guang's side, Gil found an opportunity to counterattack after evading the attack. With several consecutive shots, they fired bullets towards the unappealing face of the Goddess of Revenge. Because the Goddess of Revenge looked at Luo Guang, Gil's bullet did not hit her relatively soft eye, so Gil's counterattack only rang the bell on her brain seed, making a clanging sound. However, Gil's attack successfully caught the attention of the Avengers, as in their eyes, Gil's danger was much higher than Luo Guang's. Just as the Goddess of Revenge was attracted by Gil's attack, Luo Guang immediately got up from the ground to avoid further passivity. Because the Goddess of Revenge launched an attack on Luo Guang naturally didn't care about anything else, or how to explain when he saw the people of Amber Company later. He also used his small pistol to shoot the other party a few times. As long as he is included in the hunting list, Luo Guang must also bear the pursuit of the Goddess of Revenge. It seems that the Goddess of Revenge only pursues St. The two of ARS are because of St. The people of ARS are the main targets of the Goddess of Revenge, while the secondary targets that block the way, such as Luo Guang, have long been defeated by the goddess of revenge. Although Luo Guang is nominally an intelligence officer of Umbrella Company, he knows that those damn European researchers would not do anything when they learned about this situation. Instead, he would mock Luo Guang for being involved and not hide from his own achievements. Indeed, if Luo Guang hid in a small alley, the goddess of revenge would not have included him as a hunting target. However, that alley was a dead end, and there were already many zombies gathering on the other side of the wall. Therefore, Luo Guang had to leave the alley to maintain his initiative, rather than being passive and praying that the battle between Gil and the Avenger would not affect him. Speaking of combat. Because Luo Guang is not used to using guns, he has only fired a few times since crossing over. Therefore, compared to Gil or ordinary police officers, Luo Guang's marksmanship is very poor. Within a distance of less than 20 meters, he missed one of his 4 shots, and the other 3 shots hit the bulletproof binding clothes on the body of the goddess of revenge, tickling the opponent. And what Luo Guang aimed at was actually the head of the goddess of revenge. The goddess of revenge's mind was quite effective, and in an instant, she analyzed the more threatening side from the shots of Gil and Luo Guang respectively. The retracted tentacles were shot again, but this time the targets were all on Gil. The goddess of revenge has lowered the threat level of Luo Guang to the lowest level. Gil dodged to one side, but due to having more tentacles than before, the G18 pistol in his hand was hit, and he was immediately hit and shattered by a heavy blow from the goddess of revenge. Gil didn't have time for her to miss this sacrificial pistol either. A shotgun was pulled out from behind, and a mad fart shot out with the sound of the shotgun. Bang! Click and wipe. Bang! Gil's goal is not the essence of the goddess of revenge, but 2 shots towards the shrinking tentacle cluster. Unlike the hard head and bulletproof restraining armor of the goddess of revenge, the tentacles became very soft and non-bullet resistant to ensure elasticity. Therefore, Gil suddenly broke nearly 1/3 of the tentacles, forcing the goddess of revenge to quickly retract them. On the other hand, Luo Guang made the system search for the opponent's weaknesses while moving to the side, forming a fierce confrontation with Gil against the goddess of revenge. Although the small pistol in Luo Guang's hand can only cause slight damage to the enemy's head, as long as the opponent pays attention to protecting the head, which is a minor weakness, it can always play a certain restraining role. But now there is a lack of ways to break the game. Although Luo Guang has been actively seeking ways to break the situation, he feels very puzzled at this moment. He doesn't even want to get involved in the stories of the main characters and others. As a result, when he left the apartment, he met Gil. They had already separated, but now Luo Guang ran into the scene of the revenge goddess's murder and was about to be killed by this monster. Of course, give me a rocket launcher with unlimited bullets, and that's another story. Luo Guang's thought triggered a response from the system, which replied, "This system does not support the redemption function." Luo Guang didn't respond and fired 2 more shots, venting his anger. This time, because the enemy's gaze was focused on Gil, Luo Guang, who had already stood up, could position himself and shoot. With his previous shooting experience, Luo Guang gained a brand new understanding of the recoil of his weapon. He relaxed his grip slightly and no longer wanted to use brute force to block the recoil. Thank you, Brad. The G17 pistol is even more suitable for him than Luo Guang thought. After Luo Guang adjusted, both of these shots hit the head of the vengeful goddess slowly approaching Gil. With a sound from Duong, one of the bullets bounced off, but luckily another bullet was slightly inserted, interrupting the enemy's attack on Gil again, giving Gil an opportunity to break several of his tentacles. Just as Luo Guang and Gil were still cautiously entangled with the goddess of revenge, searching for an opportunity to escape, zombie figures began to appear around them. Luo Guang noticed this situation, but there was no good solution. On the contrary, the goddess of revenge took the lead in making a change, retracting all remaining tentacles and twisting into a huge fist. He took a step back with his hind legs and squatted in a starting position. Gil naturally noticed the opponent's attack intent and tactics, and ran straight towards the abandoned car on the side. There was another oppressive roar, and the goddess of revenge, with her right hand protecting her head, raised her left fist high and rushed towards Gil. With a wave of her left fist, she swept an old Ford parked in front of her to the left. Gil, who was hiding behind another car, naturally saw this situation as well, but Gil also noticed that the goddess of revenge only observed her position before the sprint, and her right hand, which had been protecting her head since then, also blocked her line of sight. Seeing that the other party had not withdrawn their right arm to observe their position again, Gil ran to the left and successfully avoided the heavy punch that the other party was charging towards. Although they avoided the attack, the distance between the two had narrowed to 5 meters, and the surrounding zombies gradually surrounded them. The situation worsened as the vengeful goddess, who had wandered leisurely in the courtyard, ran away, making it even more difficult for the two to escape. There were also zombies approaching behind Luo Guang's side. In order to avoid being surrounded, Luo Guang had no choice but to clean up the zombies behind him first, and could no longer distract the attention of the vengeful goddess from Gil's side. However, although neither Gil or Luo Guang had a way to break the game, the person who broke the game appeared. A rocket carrying its tail smoke attacked the goddess of revenge. The goddess of revenge, who was focusing her attention on Gil, did not react and collided directly with the rocket. Then, she was engulfed by the explosion of the rocket, and the goddess of revenge, shrouded in flames, still stood still, emitting a terrifying roar. Luo Guang and Gil both noticed this situation and coincidentally looked in the direction of the rocket. The person holding the rocket launcher was seen wearing military attire, a tactical vest full of magazines, bulletproof vests, pants, knee pads, combat boots, and a latest M4A1 carbine on his back. The man in military uniform saw that the goddess of revenge still stood firm without hesitation, and then fired another rocket directly at her. This time, the goddess of revenge finally stopped standing and knelt on the ground, with no sound left, only the sound of cracking and burning. BCS. Luo Guang noticed the abbreviation on the armband of the other party. The Umbrella Biohazard Countermeasure Service is the private army of Umbrella Corporation and one of the victims of the Raccoon City biohazard weapon testing ground. Luo Guang still has some impression of this unit, and one of the main characters in the group is from this unit. Is everything okay? The man immediately threw down the 4 rocket launchers and ran towards Gil, helping Gil, who was squatting behind the car in a protective posture to prevent explosive impact, up. As for a man's nature, Luo Guang has no idea what the other person is doing. He just exclaimed anxiously, "The monster is not dead yet, keep firing." While shouting, Luo Guang bypassed the goddess of revenge and converged towards Gil. "That thing is out of ammunition." The man looked at Luo Guang and replied helplessly, "Is that monster still alive? That guy hasn't even been blown apart, how could he die so easily?" Luo Guang seemed to be inferring, saying, "The most ordinary zombies need to be dealt with first, let alone this monster. Indeed, that monster has rough skin and thick flesh." Gil couldn't help but agree with Luo Guang's statement based on his previous interactions with the goddess of revenge. "That's the only thing we can use." The other person turned their head and gestured for the gun they were carrying behind them, saying, "The power is not enough, I'm still worried that this guy will come back to life if we don't defeat him." Luo Guang shook his head, his words with a hint of certainty that the tyrant was not dead, which made Gil doubt Luo Guang's identity. Gil once encountered a similar terrifying monster. The tyrant. At the Yangguan, so he had some understanding of the bullet resistance ability of similar vengeance goddess, and also understood that ordinary firearms have limited damage to them. As Luo Guang previously said, vengeance goddess was not blown apart, so with the tyrant's tenacious vitality, vengeance goddess may recover. However, if Luo Guang was a commoner, how could he be so afraid or have any understanding of the goddess of revenge? Once Gil became suspicious, his mind quickly recalled the encounter between the two. Indeed, Luo Guang did not indicate his profession, but apart from Luo Guang, who had not mentioned much about himself, there seemed to be nothing strange about it, and he didn't seem to be from the Amber Company at all. "I don't have time to fill you with bullets now. Hurry up and run away," Luo Guang added nervously, glancing at the still motionless goddess of revenge and the approaching zombies. "The zombies are coming around." Luo Guang's words made the man and Gil wake up from a dream. Regardless of whether Luo Guang's words were correct or not, the first priority at this moment was indeed to leave here. Luo Guang naturally wanted to take advantage of the silence of the goddess of revenge to solve her in one breath, but unfortunately, the current conditions do not allow it. Without powerful weapons, relying only on a few guns to solve the goddess of revenge did not know that it would take a long time. The constant appearance of zombies around also worried Luo Guang that when the goddess of revenge suddenly moved, the three of them would be unable to fly. Although Gil has some doubts about Luo Guang, based on his performance during this period, the other party did not have any malice towards him. Unlike people from Amber Company, after ruling out the possibility of being a lackey of Amber Company who is familiar with biological weapons, is it a third party that he is not aware of? Upon hearing Luo Guang urging the two of them to leave quickly, Gil, who was thinking, did not object and nodded in agreement with Luo Guang's words. The man saw Gil and Luo Guang, mainly because the beautiful Gil also agreed to Luo Guang's suggestion. After a frivolous smile at Gil, he said, "Okay, come with me. Our troops have established a small evacuation point at the subway station on Central Street, which is not far from here. Let's go there." Luo Guang also had plans to go to the subway station to see what was going on, nodded, and followed the man. Gil also followed and walked at the end of the team. Because just as the man turned around, Gil saw the name UBCS on the military shoulder badge on his right arm. I found this name when Gil was investigating the Amber Company. This is the abbreviation for the name of one of the private armies of the Umbrella Company. Thank you for the recommended tickets all along *, end of this chapter. Chapter 8. Carlos Oliveira. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Carlos Oliveira. The man is a bit familiar with himself, and when he took Luo Guang and Gil to the Central Street subway station, he couldn't stop talking. The man claimed to be Carlos Oliveira, and as expected, he was a soldier in the Amber Resident Evil Emergency Response Force, responsible for heavy firepower support and rear security in the team. Carlos just joined this unit not long ago. At UBCS is still considered a new recruit, but Carlos himself has also experienced war. Just joined UB. Not long after, CS faced such a big scene in the first battle that he couldn't help but complain a few words to Gil and Luo Guang, but Carlos was still optimistic and boasted to Luo Guang about how many civilians he had helped and saved. When Gil learned that Carlos was a private army of the Umbrella Company, it can be said that it was instinctive, and he immediately developed a sense of distrust towards Carlos, even though Carlos had just saved himself and Luo Guang. Glancing at the unidentified Luo Guang again, it seemed that he didn't have much reaction to Carlos's identity. In the end, Gil still kept his doubts in his heart, but when he took action, he had more considerations. After all, the Westbrook who betrayed him back then was a member of the Umbrella Company. Carlos felt a bit bored when he saw that Gil and Luo Guang were not interested in their boasting, but considering the terrifying monsters they had encountered before, Carlos didn't want to complain and instead started talking about things related to survival. Our team has established a temporary shelter at the subway station and is currently organizing survivors to leave the station, but in the current situation, it's a bit difficult. Carlos continued, knowing that neither of them was interested in talking and didn't show any interest. The subway at the subway station has cut off power, and although there is still an emergency power supply inside, the subway car will not function properly after the power outage in the control room. According to the investigators' report, it seems that there is a problem at the substation. I was assigned a mission to contact and rescue, and ended up encountering both of you being attacked by that monster. Carlos briefly explained his situation and added, since we have encountered both of you, let's take you back to a safe place. Carlos doesn't seem to know Gil, he is indeed UBCS. New recruit, thinking that both Luo Guang and others were civilians, happened to encounter the monster he had seen for the first time. After all, the purpose of our UBCS establishment is to solve this terrible crisis, and no matter what, I am proud of my actions in this disaster. Carlos is completely unaware of the situation with the Umbrella Company, so he is still very proud of his job. At least he has indeed saved civilians who fled their lives. However, this seemed to be stirring up Gil's nerves. When Gil heard Carlos say that his team was protecting civilians, he couldn't help but frown. He heard Carlos say UB. When CS established his purpose and felt proud, he couldn't help but lower his voice, as if a volcano was about to erupt, and angrily said, "This. Carlos, do you know how this disaster happened?" Luo Guang interrupted Gil's words with a slightly higher voice. Luo Guang doesn't want the two of them to go their separate ways because of an argument. He wants to follow Carlos directly to the Central Street subway station, but he also doesn't want to reduce Gil's favorability towards him. Gil is someone who will do everything for his friends. In this Raccoon City, as a teammate, he is more trustworthy than most people. Hey! Although Gil didn't say anything, Carlos still saw anger and suspicion on Gil's face. He looked at the angry Gil with a puzzled expression. Just as he was about to say something, he was caught off guard by Luo Guang's question. After a moment of confusion, he said, "We didn't know that our order was to go to Raccoon City to save survivors and eliminate terrifying monsters as much as possible. Our troops even cooperated with RPD and the military in several annihilation battles, but the effect was not very good. We couldn't stop the zombies from heading south into the city center." Carlos wants to loudly tell Gil that in those battles, UB. The members of CS also sacrificed a lot, whether they joined UB. What is the purpose of CS? They all died to save Raccoon City. And Gil was also CS saved himself. However, in the end, Carlos's throat twitched and he still didn't say anything. Although Carlos didn't say it, what Gil saw from the expression on Carlos's head was the anger of Gil insulting himself and his teammates. When I confronted the director after the Yangguan incident, I think I had the same expression. Gil was interrupted by Luo Guang and heard Carlos speak unknowingly. Finally, he took a deep breath and suppressed the surging anger, but his tone remained sharp as he said, "I didn't mean to insult you and those sacrificial teammates, but these are biochemical monsters created by the Umbrella Company." What? Angry Carlos was shocked by Gil's words and then said incredulously, "Miss, you can't speak recklessly. Do you have any evidence?" As soon as Gil said this, Carlos could also understand why Gil knew he was UB. After CS, she will feel angry and suspicious, even if she just saved her. Gil was momentarily speechless, as he was secretly collecting evidence of the Umbrella Company, but the evidence he had collected had already been burned down in the apartment, and Gil did not believe that Carlos, as a new recruit, knew about the information about the Yangguan incident. When Carlos saw Gil's expression, he immediately knew that the other party had no evidence, but the other party's expression didn't look fake, so Carlos still said thoughtfully, "It seems that Gil and our company have a lot of conflicts, but without evidence, it's hard to convince people that this Amber Company will personally destroy the raccoon market they invested in and built." Alas, Gil also understood that the other party was trying to lower the stairs for himself, but thinking of Brad who sacrificed himself, Gil couldn't swallow this breath in his heart. In addition, for Carlos, who was determined to save the survivors, Gil couldn't bear to see the other party being used unknowingly by the Amber Company. The situation has already happened, whether it was done by Amber Company or not, our current goal is the same. Seeing both of them anger subside, Luo Guang came out to make a comeback. That's right. Carlos was a bit grateful to Luo Guang for coming out to smooth things out. Upon hearing Luo Guang's words, he immediately expressed his agreement, and then said seriously to Gil, "Gil, you just need to confirm with your own eyes what kind of team we UBCS are. And I will personally confirm what you said about our company." Let's temporarily put aside this debate in order to survive in this hell. Okay, Gil said helplessly, but also agreed with Luo Guang and nodded. The location where Luo Guang and Gil met is actually very close to the Central Street subway station. In the midst of their words, led by Carlos, the three of them arrived at the entrance of the Central Street subway station. With the cover of Luo Guang and Gil, they opened the iron gate. Carlos was the first to enter, and then his arms exerted force to lift the iron gate, urging Luo Guang and Gil to hurry in. Luo Guang doesn't have any preference for ladies. After all, this iron gate is enough for two people to enter at the same time. After Luo Guang and Gil entered left and right, Carlos quickly closed the iron gate and listened to the outside noise for a moment. After confirming their safety, he led Luo Guang and Gil towards the subway train where their captain was located. When descending the stairs, Carlos specifically turned around and instructed Gil, "Don't tell my boss before, he has a bad temper." Gil didn't respond and nodded silently. "Captain Victor, I have returned with 2 survivors I encountered on the way. Regarding the task of contacting and rescuing, I have found a good communication radio station, but it cannot be used without electricity supply. We still need to solve the problem at the substation." Carlos was the first to speak up after entering, also to introduce the name of his team captain. There is only one person sitting on a subway chair in the entire carriage, which should be the captain mentioned by Carlos. Captain Victor looks quite old, with pale hair and wrinkles all over his face, but Luo Guang can still see the powerful muscles hidden under the military uniform. When Luo Guang and others entered, Captain Victor seemed to have just changed the medicine for his wound, with a pile of bloody bandages beside him. Looking at Captain Victor holding onto his right abdomen, it should be the injured area, but I don't know what caused it. However, Captain Victor ignored Carlos's words and instead said to Gil, "Oh. Isn't this Gil Valentian, a former STRS elite member trained by the Delta Special Forces?" Carlos, for ST. I also remember the name ARS, but after all, I joined UB/CS was sent on a mission to Raccoon City shortly after, so he is not yet familiar with some important information. "New recruit, don't you think you brought a weak chicken back?" Before Gil could respond, the captain looked at Carlos and struck, "This person is not an ordinary survivor, but a survivor of the Yangguan incident." Carlos didn't know much about the Yangguan incident and asked strangely, "But weren't the parties involved in that incident completely wiped out?" Carlos only then remembered why he had feelings for ST. "I have an impression of the name ARS, but it was a last-minute tutoring session that Carlos spent an hour on before his mission, and the relevant information he read was not confidential core information." When Carlos was about to explain to Gil, Captain Victor deliberately said, "The initial investigation report stated that no survivors were found, but later we discovered that there were still survivors. The investigator submitted a new report." "Carlos, you haven't finished reading the report on the Yokoyama incident, have you?" "Yes, because there isn't enough time." Although Carlos joined UB/CS didn't take long, but Captain Victor still held on to Carlos, knowing that with Carlos's personality, he would only glance at the information roughly before departure. Captain Victor, after all, holds a position at the captain level. He knows some details and the true situation of the Yangguan incident better than Carlos, but he has no obligation to explain it to Carlos. He looked at the watch on the inside of his left wrist and said, "We don't have time to procrastinate. Since the plan to request rescue from our headquarters has failed, most of the team members have already been MIA. So let's evacuate Raccoon City by subway according to the plan." "Got it, there's still the brother who restored power. Are you back?" The teammate in charge of restoring power left much earlier than Carlos, but now Carlos has returned. The teammate who restored power has not yet returned, and the power has not been restored. So it's a bit difficult for Carlos to talk about, but for Michael Victor, who has extensive military experience, he's used to it. With a resolute expression on his face, Victor did not show any sadness, but his voice became much lower and he said, "Their mission is likely to have failed. Let's trouble this Gil Valentian for the matter over there." "What?" Carlos was puzzled, but soon his face showed surprise. The captain actually pushed this task to a civilian. Gil immediately understood what Captain Victor was saying about the trouble, but Gil didn't hesitate. He just glanced at the civilians walking in the next carriage and agreed, "Okay, what exactly should we do?" "Captain, I disagree. How could civilians be allowed to do such dangerous work?" Although Gil expressed agreement, Carlos did not agree. "Carlos, she came out of an elite team and is still a survivor of the Yangguan incident. She has much more experience than you in how to survive in the current Raccoon City." When Victor saw Gil, he thought of asking Gil to complete the task of restoring electricity. The reason why he mentioned Gil's deeds when he met was to make Carlos, this foolish boy, understand that Gil is not a vase. Listening to the three of them chatting on the side, Invisible Man Luo Guang heard Victor's straightforward request and Gil agreeing to the other party's task without hesitation. He couldn't help but feel a bit strange, as one dared to speak and the other dared to take it. Victor continued to explain, and our UBCS personnel are seriously insufficient. There are still civilians in need of our protection here, and we must make use of any useful combat power. Carlos, this is not the time to focus on these things. As a member of STRS, protecting civilians is also my responsibility. Gil said very seriously, although he said to UB. The CS people felt uncomfortable pushing things onto themselves, but Gil saw the figures of other civilians on the train. For these people, Gil also had to take on this task and complete it. Carlos saw Gil's persistence, coupled with his captain's recognition of Gil's abilities, finally let go and said, "Pay attention to safety, and take this." Carlos took out a walkie-talkie from behind, adjusted the channel, and handed it to Gil, saying, "You go to the substation first, let the electricity supply come over, and then go to the subway office to set up the route. If there is anything, contact through this. There is also an exit to take the B exit of the subway station." "Okay." Gil remembered Carlos' words, took the walkie-talkie, clipped it onto his waist belt, nodded, and without looking back, bravely left the train. Captain Victor breathed a sigh of relief as he saw Gil leave. He said to Luo Guang, who was quietly listening to their conversation, "Luo, I didn't expect you to stay here." Meow, end of this chapter. Chapter 9. Insurance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Insurance. Being named by Captain Victor, Luo Guang didn't expect it, but his expression remained unchanged without revealing any flaws. "But are you also very similar in appearance to Luo Guang from Amber Company?" Luo Guang thought of it, not knowing whether the situation was good or bad. Damn temporary task. Luo Guang does not know what kind of person Luo Guang from Amber Company is, nor does he know how Captain Victor and that person got to know each other, nor is his relationship clear. Because Luo Guang did not inherit the memory of being an Umbrella intelligence agent, he did not want to talk too much to the other party, and his words were relatively concise, fearing that he might accidentally reveal something and cause suspicion. Temporary task. It seems that intelligence agents are not easy to do either. Captain Victor smiled, but Luo Guang couldn't see what that smile meant. Luo Guang shrugged and said helplessly, "The company's rules." "Yes, the company's rules," Captain Victor agreed. Carlos looked around at his captain and Luo Guang with a shocked expression on his face. He thought he had saved two ordinary civilians, but one turned out to be an elite member of ARS, one of whom is an intelligence officer from Amber Corporation. It turned out that it was because Luo Guang was an employee of Amber Company that he interrupted Gil's baseless accusations against the company. Thinking back to what Luo Guang had said before, Carlos thought to himself. But how did these two people come together? Carlos was a bit puzzled in his heart, but soon realized the reason. Gil's attitude towards Luo Guang was not like his own towards Amber Company. Considering Luo Guang's identity as an intelligence officer, it is likely that Luo Guang deliberately concealed his identity. Victor's teammates don't care about Luo Guang's appearance that he doesn't want to reveal too much. Intelligence agents are like that, speak less and listen more. As a former soldier and now a mercenary, Captain Victor only cares about whether the tasks assigned to him can be completed. How did you get hurt? While Gil was talking to Victor, Luo Guang was observing him and noticed that Captain Victor's left hand was constantly covering his right waist and abdomen. He tentatively asked. It was scraped by the fragments of the explosion. Upon hearing Luo Guang's question, Carlos nervously watched his movements, but Victor calmly replied. It seemed that Victor was not surprised that Luo Guang would ask this question. Luo Guang thought so, outlining the image of Amber Company in his mind, being silent, prioritizing his own interests, and having difficulty building trust in others. Luo Guang stared into Victor's eyes, met the other person, and then nodded. How is the situation now? I need firearms and ammunition. Although Luo Guang has an employee card, there is no information such as military rank on it, so Luo Guang is not clear who has a higher level with Victor, so he did not use orders. From what Captain Victor said to Luo Guang at the beginning, it seems that the two of them are not in a hierarchical relationship. Carlos was able to answer this question and pointed to the empty arsenal box on the other end of the workshop, saying, there is no extra ammunition here. We have encountered many things along the way, either lost or used up ammunition. To be honest, we do need to withdraw as soon as possible. Is that right? Luo Guang sighed, and he didn't hesitate about what he didn't have. Just as he was about to say something, someone opened the door and entered. Wearing AU, just like Carlos and Victor B. The man with a hooked nose in CS's military uniform and armband walked in. Sharp vulture-like eyes scanned the carriage and saw Luo Guang snorting contemptuously, you haven't escaped yet. Isn't it you who wants to run away quickly? The other person's tone was a bit contemptuous, so Luo Guang's reply was also prickly. At the first sight of the man in front of him, Luo Guang sounded an alarm in his heart, either due to his own bias or simply because he believed that the other person was a selfish and dangerous person, with a villainous expression on his face. But no matter what, Luo Guang still decided to stay away from this guy and be careful of this person stabbing him in the back. Of course, if possible, Luo Guang wants to stab this person in the waist and solve the hidden danger in advance. Humph. The other person still had a stinky expression and a feeling of rejection. From Luo Guang's observation, his answer probably matched the other person's impression of Luo Guang. Genevieve, what's going on outside? Victor was not interested in the quality of their relationship and asked the hooked-nosed man Nikolai Genevieve. It's still like that ghost, rescue signals can't be sent out, and all the administrative departments in Raccoon City are paralyzed. Nikolai Genevieve's task was reconnaissance, but of course, Nikolai Genevieve had other tasks, and his true position was as a surveillance officer for the Oliveira company. BCS dispatched a total of 4 platoons to Raccoon City to carry out rescue and cleaning tasks, namely Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta teams. Among them, Mikhail Victor is the captain of the Delta team, and Nikolai Genevieve is the captain of the Beta team. Nikolai Genevieve was currently following the Delta team, and all of his Beta team teammates had lost their lives in the hands of the biological weapons he had sent to the BOW. The purpose of Nikolai Genevieve's actions was to complete the task entrusted to him by the Oliveira company. To collect combat data on biological weapons. At the moment, following behind the Delta team is also based on the same reason, taking the Delta team as the test object of biological and chemical weapons, and also as the eyeliner of the company to monitor the team, so as to prevent it from doing things that are not in line with the interests of the company. Although Michael Victor was employed by Amber Corporation as a member of CS, but it is not considered voluntary to join, more because of the situation. After retiring from the regular army, Captain Victor became the leader of an underground guerrilla organization and participated in a series of terrorist actions to fight for independence for the local people. He also utilized his unparalleled leadership skills to carry out several successful actions, including the attack on the ambassador's residence. However, when he attempted to lead a group of refugees across the border, Michael Victor was surrounded by government forces. For the safety of the refugees, he and his comrades immediately disarmed. He was sentenced to death for a terrorist attack in an international trial court and will be executed the next day. However, a few hours later, security experts from Umbrella Company made a deal with him regarding his joining UBCS as a condition, in exchange for the safety of his subordinates' lives. As the shadow of death approached, Mikhail Victor naturally handed over his life to the Amber Company without hesitation, and as one of the terms of the contract, his wife and subordinates were immediately acquitted. The Umbrella Company saved Michael Victor's wife and subordinates not because of kindness, but because of profit. According to the investigators' assessment report, the Amber Company believes that Michael Victor's military capabilities are worth it. His wife and subordinates are the chips or hostages that the Amber Company manipulates Michael Victor to complete various difficult and unknown tasks for themselves. On the other hand, Nikolai Zinoviev did these things not because of his loyalty to the Umbrella Company, but because as an observer, he could obtain more information than other team members when carrying out these biochemical tasks related to the Umbrella Company. In addition to ensuring the priority of escape, he also received nearly 10 times more compensation after the mission than others. For Ambra, compared to Mikhail Victor, who was forced to join, Nikolai Zinoviev, a person with no conscience, cruelty, and love for money, is more suitable to become an Ambra monitor or, to put it bluntly, an Ambra lackey. Then we can only see to what extent that STRS can achieve, Captain Victor whispered upon hearing Nikolai's words. Captain Victor is not the kind of person who places hope on others, but he always follows his own UBCS's teammates are already running out, and the only people around him who can use them are a new recruit Carlos, an untrustworthy Nikolai, and a capable but already tasked Tyrell. Raccoon City is not a battlefield where ordinary humans fight against each other and become political victims. More enemies are various biochemical monsters caused by biochemical leaks. In this regard, Gil's experience is not inferior to his own and others. In addition, his original profession was to protect a peaceful police officer, which allowed Captain Victor to entrust this important task to Gil with peace of mind. STRS. Nikolai heard Victor whispering. Gil Valentian. Gil will always come back on this subway train after completing his mission, and the two will eventually encounter each other, so Captain Victor has no hidden thoughts. Oh. Nikolai seemed to have thought of something interesting, his mouth curved upwards, and he didn't wait for Victor, who was dealing with the injury, to agree. He directly suggested that he thought of a place where he might still be able to contact the outside world, so he left without looking back. The two were nominally of the same level, so Captain Victor's eagle-like eyes were fixed on Nicholas leaving without saying anything. The carriage fell silent, and Luo Guang was taking advantage of the time to stop and rest. He immediately immersed himself in the knowledge carried by the learning system, browsing through the information displayed in his mind while thinking about something. If I remember correctly, with Gil present, this escape train will be destroyed by the chasing Avengers. So, if Gil didn't board this train, there's a high probability that there won't be any accidents here, and he can quickly leave Raccoon City. This is a good thing no matter what you think. As for Gil, Luo Guang is not worried that this strong woman will not survive. With this in mind, Luo Guang was also making knowledge reserves for it. After confirming that he was surrounded by his own people, from Umbrella Company, he took out the notebook that recorded some surveillance information about Gil and began to study it. Gil has been secretly investigating the research and development of biological and chemical viruses and weapons carried out by Umbrella Company in private, hoping to report to the government after obtaining evidence and rely on national forces to defeat the giant Umbrella Company. The cause of the investigation is precisely because Gil is a survivor of the Yangguan incident, and it can be said that there is a great hatred between Gil and the Umbrella Company. Personally speaking, Gil's St. Most of AR's teammates were brutally killed by biological weapons. For the public, St. The responsibility of ARS lies in protecting citizens, and the umbrella company is destroying the people living here. According to rumors, St. The establishment of ARS and the subsequent investigation of the Foreign Museum were aimed at making ARS became the target of various biochemical weapons for data collection and improvement. Looking at the content on the notebook, Gil did not investigate much information, and he did not find any concrete evidence to prove the criminal behavior of Umbrella Company. Therefore, Umbrella Company's Luo Guang only had the task of monitoring without silencing. However, as he continued to read, Luo Guang felt that the Luo Guang of Ambra Company was a pervert. As the surveillance time grew, the details recorded by this Luo Guang became more and more detailed, even recording Gil's bathing and toilet time through various means. As Gil's investigation into the Umbrella Company came to a standstill, the records in this notebook became more like the diary of a perverted stalker. Wrinkling his brows, Luo Guang closed his notebook to avoid contaminating his eyes again. Let's find a fire later, Luo Guang thought to himself. Now that he is carrying this notebook, Luo Guang feels inexplicable shame. Looking at Carlos had just been fiddling with a device next to Victor and didn't pay attention to it. Captain Victor didn't look at Luo Guang either, but lowered his head and pondered something. Neither of them looked at Luo Guang, causing him to breathe a slight sigh of relief. Perhaps noticing Luo Guang's gaze, Captain Victor lifted his head and looked back at Luo Guang. Luo, after thinking for a moment, I still can't rely solely on a former STRS person for hope. Raccoon City is too dangerous, it's not safe for Raccoon City, Gil was too dangerous. Luo Guang thought to himself that Gil seemed to have a title called Arms Queen, while Claire's title seemed to come from Walking Through the Arsenal. However, Luo Guang understood what Victor was trying to say, and it seemed that the old man in front of him wanted to find Gil. If Gil is still alive, then the two will work together. If Gil's body is not found or only found, then the task of restoring subway power naturally falls on Luo Guang. I understand. Without further ado, if Luo Guang didn't know about the explosion in Raccoon City, he would naturally reject the other party. Although Luo Guang could also raise objections and ask Carlos to do this, now that Carlos knows his identity and his personality, if Carlos finds Gil, it is highly likely that he will tell Gil about Luo Guang's identity. Therefore, Luo Guang should take the initiative and seize the opportunity to get a good impression of Gil. As for how to build good relationships, as long as two people can complete the task together, they can naturally gain a wave of good relationships with life and death comrades. However, at this moment, Luo Guang forgot that Carlos didn't need to find Gil at all. He just needed to tell him through the walkie-talkie. Seeing Luo Guang agreeing, Captain Victor showed a rare smile and took out the walkie-talkie from his waist. After adjusting the channel, he threw it to Luo Guang. Luo Guang grabbed it with one hand and was about to try to contact Gil when Carlos stopped him with a skeptical gaze and said, "The signal cannot be transmitted in the subway station, and I don't know if Gil needs to keep quiet." Okay. Luo Guang didn't try again, so he took a short break. Since time was tight, he had to get up and leave the carriage. As if suddenly thinking of something, he turned around and said seriously to the two of them, "The target of the goddess of revenge is STRS. For the sake of you and those civilians, it's better not to let Gil hitchhike. Also, be careful of Nikolai. He was arranged into the United States by Umbrella Company BCS's monitor." After speaking, Luo Guang didn't wait for Carlos to speak and left the carriage without looking back. Michael Victor and Michelle Victor, Gil Valentian and Gil Valentine, due to historical reasons, have various translated names for characters. If you see that some of the characters have names that are different from the official translated names published now, it's better to assume that I'm avoiding suspicion. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Zombie Dog. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Zombie Dog. There is a reason why Luo Guang chose to tell the two people about the target of the goddess of revenge and the true position of Nicholas. Both of them are under the umbrella of Umbrella Corporation. BCS happens to be in the same position as Luo Guang, the intelligence agent. From the attitude of Delta Team Captain Victor towards Luo Guang, there is still a certain level of trust between the two. Only in this way can Luo Guang's information be trusted. Conversely, if Luo Guang tells Gil this information, Gil will immediately question Luo Guang's identity and refuse to believe his intelligence. Luo Guang had no hostility towards Gil, but their relationship did not reach the point where Luo Guang had to go to great lengths to persuade Gil. There's no way. Luo Guang and Gil, who have traveled here, are naturally in a hostile position. Even if Luo Guang didn't hide his identity from the beginning, Gil would believe that an intelligence officer from Ambra suddenly realized his conscience and told him such important information. It should be noted that those who can access this information are already at a certain level within the Ambra company. Speaking of the insurance mission taken over by Luo Guang, is the image of Luo Guang, an intelligence officer from Ambra company, that of someone who is capable of both writing and fighting. How could you let yourself do such a dangerous thing? Although Luo Guang seemed to have calmly accepted the task to Carlos, in reality, he was not as strong and calm as he had imagined. It has been nearly 4 hours since we traveled, and the excitement brought by the acquisition system has long disappeared, leaving only confusion about the future. Leaving the subway train and at the ticket window, Luo Guang stuffed 9mm bullets into the matching magazine of the G17 pistol, pondering. The system is not particularly powerful, but it does play a huge role for Luo Guang in Raccoon City. At least now, when facing ordinary zombies, Luo Guang has room to deal with enemies. But in the previous battle with the Goddess of Revenge, if it weren't for the system's brief control of the body to avoid the tentacle's sweep, I would probably have been seriously injured and the treatment was ineffective, resulting in a peaceful death. Even with the addition of a system, the chances of winning against biochemical weapons such as tyrants are still too low. If this world is indeed set against the backdrop of the Resident Evil game, taking the Resident Evil in Raccoon City as an opportunity, global bioterrorism events will become very frequent, and one cannot do without sufficient strength to protect oneself. Luo Guang thought so in his heart, and the system naturally read Luo Guang's thoughts. As an adaptive system, it can change Luo Guang's emotions by adjusting his hormone secretion, but the system did not do so. As long as Luo Guang is still within the realm of human abilities, without the help of heavy weapons, he will indeed find it difficult to defeat biochemical weapons like tyrants that can be immune to most light weapon damage. At present, there is no good way for the system to deal with this. After all, it only plays an auxiliary role, and whether it can successfully evolve ultimately depends on its own adaptation. Luo Guang. Luo Guang did not feel depressed for a long time. After loading the bullets and putting the remaining loose bullets back into his backpack, Luo Guang regained his energy, held a gun in hand, and left the Central Street subway station along the route that Gil had left. There were not many obstacles that were difficult to deal with along the way. With the help of the system, Luo Guang did not get lost and walked towards the direction of the substation. On the way, he followed the path that Gil had taken before, following the place where Gil had eliminated the zombies. After Gil received the short sword, he also tended to use melee weapons to deal with these ordinary zombies. Luo Guang looked at the wound on the head of the truly deceased zombie on the ground and thought. Because Gil mostly used melee tactics to deal with the enemy, there were no other zombies gathering along with the gunfire, so Luo Guang's journey was very smooth. Kendo Gun Shop. Luo Guang looked up at the name of the shop in front of him. The name Kendo is taken from the surname of Robert Kendo, the owner of the gun shop. During the outbreak of the Resident Evil in Raccoon City, Robert Kendo distributed the weapons from his gun shop to his neighbors, saving many people during the first wave of the outbreak. So at this moment, the door of the gun shop was open, but from the outside, it seemed that it had not been smashed and bought for 0 yuan. It seems that the fun inside has already been taken away by someone. Luo Guang thought so, but now the street seems to have collapsed for a while, like encountering a gas explosion, and there are still many zombies in the opposite side and pit. It seems that Gil did not go that way. Indeed, Luo Guang is also worried about being attacked on the way up and down. Since there is a shop next door with an unlocked door, according to the customs of most lighthouse countries, there is usually a back door or a channel for purchasing goods. It's better to go in and try your luck. Luo Guang thought this way and did the same. There was no one inside the gun shop, but there was a slight noise coming from behind an iron door. Luo Guang remembered Kendo and his daughter clearly, so he didn't disturb them. Since the shop owner was still there, Luo Guang didn't take his steps lightly and coughed, telling him that someone was coming. Luo Guang could hear the sound of people walking inside the iron gate, but it was obvious that the people inside did not intend to open the door. Instead, they were guarding the people outside. There seemed to be few antidotes in the hospital, but Luo Guang did not tell Kendo about it. Firstly, the two have not yet had such a relationship. Secondly, it is unknown whether Kendo, who has become paranoid due to his wife's departure and his daughter's infection, will listen to the words of the stranger Luo Guang. In his daughter's final moments, Kendo had already planned his own ending, instead of pursuing the elusive hope with his daughter who was about to mutate into a zombie. When Kendo didn't find the antidote, he would instead vent his anger on himself, so he decided not to disturb him. The gun shop was naturally swept away. Luo Guang glanced at it but didn't see any useful items, so he quickly passed through the back door of the Kendo gun shop and continued towards the direction of the substation. Bang, bang. After leaving Kendo gun shop and following the alley to bypass the open circuit, Luo Guang continued to move towards the direction of the substation and soon arrived at a community-like place. Not long after, Luo Guang faintly heard two consecutive gunshots, similar to his G17 pistol, probably of the same model as himself. Is it Gil? Luo Guang guessed. Luo Guang immediately ran towards the direction of the sound and saw Gil slowly surrounded by several zombie dogs near a community basketball court. The whole body rotted, even revealing yellow-white leg bones. Several tentacle-like objects emerged from the body, waving aimlessly, their eyes turning white but accurately looking at Gil's position. Like a pack of hunting dogs, the zombie dogs did not rush forward and became Gil's ghost under the gun. Instead, they began to disperse and prepare to besiege Gil. At this point, Gil also knew the thoughts of the zombie dogs, but did not act rashly. The zombie dogs gathered together to pursue Gil, which was not conducive to Gil's individual defeat, and it was also easier for Gil to expose his weaknesses to the zombie dogs. Gil didn't lack movement either. He pulled out his short knife from his waist with his left hand and saw the figure of Luo Guang holding a gun in his hand. He nodded lightly at Luo Guang. Just as the zombie dogs were about to complete their encirclement and prepare to launch an attack, two more shots were fired. It was Luo Guang who had prepared his shooting posture and fired the G17, targeting the zombie dogs on both sides of Gil. There were also zombie dogs between Gil and Luo Guang, but Luo Guang didn't have much confidence in his marksmanship, so he targeted the zombie dogs on both sides of Gil. Compared to other zombie dogs, Gil's reaction was faster. The flickering firelight at the muzzle of Luo Guang's first shot was like a running signal light, and Gil's body moved and rushed towards Luo Guang's direction. Compared to Luo Guang, Gil has some confidence in his marksmanship, and coupled with the lower height of the zombie dog, Gil's muzzle is slightly downward. When facing the zombie dog blocking between Luo Guang and himself, it can be said that Gil fired against the head of the zombie dog, so naturally he did not shoot crookedly. Gil didn't slow down. In Luo Guang's opinion, Gil was just breaking through on his side and accidentally shot the zombie dog, which was very handsome. The zombie dog didn't react either. As a hunter, it suddenly became the prey of the opponent and naturally had no ability to fight back. With a mournful cry, before it could fall down, Gil jumped over and joined forces with Luo Guang. Taking advantage of the surprise attack, he dealt with one and injured a zombie dog. Later, Luo Guang did not continue to shoot, but waited for Gil and himself to join forces. Between the lightning and flint, Gil and Luo Guang converged, and other zombie dogs also reacted and launched a surprise attack, closely following Gil. Nice. Luo Guang praised Gil. Thanks. After meeting, Gil replied, gave up the ray, stood next to Luo Guang, raised his gun, and fired. As soon as Gil stepped aside, Luo Guang immediately fired his gun to catch up, targeting the zombie dogs charging forward in the narrow passage between abandoned vehicles. These enemies had no room to hide, so Luo Guang, who had been well positioned, naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity. In just 2 or 3 shots, he dealt with one zombie dog. When the zombie dog in front fell, it tripped the one behind it that couldn't dodge. However, because the head of the tripped zombie dog was erratic, Luo Guang did not target the tripped zombie dog. Instead, he aimed at the zombie dog that jumped up to avoid the car accident in front, which was called 3 guns. After the zombie dog jumped into the air, its head trajectory was much easier to predict. However, Luo Guang's hit rate on moving targets was not high temporarily, so he chose to shoot 3 shots in a row and successfully killed the jumping zombie dog. The two unexpectedly had a tacit understanding and no verbal communication. When Gil saw Luo Guang aiming his target at the zombie dog between the vehicles in the middle, he placed his target on each car roof to run and jump the zombie dog. When the zombie dog jumped in the air, it was Gil's time to take action. In order to accurately eliminate the enemy, the two of them fired a bit too many shots, but 2 zombie dogs on the left and 1 on the right still broke through, leaving less than 5 meters away from Luo Guang and the other 2. Gil, located to the left of Luo Guang, was pounding with 3 more bullets, but this could only stop one zombie dog from pouncing, while the other was already drooling and greedily pouncing on Gil. At the critical moment, Gil bent down and crouched down, throwing away the G19 pistol in his right hand. His left hand, holding a short knife, pushed it upwards and inserted it into the neck of the zombie dog. Then, he followed the force of the zombie dog's attack with both hands and sent it to the left rear, throwing the zombie dog away. Bang! Just as the zombie dog was about to get up, with a bang, Gil clenched his hands on the G19 pistol that had been thrown aside and fired the last bullet from the barrel. In the center of the zombie dog's eyebrows. Gil turned around and observed the situation on Luo Guang's side. Although there was only one zombie dog on the right side, considering that the zombie dog was moving at high speed, Luo Guang did not choose to save bullets. When the zombie dog jumped up, he quickly and continuously pulled the trigger, pouring bullets from his pistol onto the zombie dog in mid-air. A bullet hit the joint of the left front leg of the zombie dog, causing it to stumble on the ground, roll off the roof, and land in front of Luo Guang. The zombie dog was about to stand up when it was hit in the head by Luo Guang's last bullet and died. After a few seconds of silence and confirming that there were no other zombie dogs moving, Luo Guang finally relaxed his tense body. After taking a soft breath, Luo Guang turned his head and said to Gil, who was about to ask a question, "It's not safe here. Let's leave here first." Although the battle did not last long, Luo Guang and his companions fired shots here, so Luo Guang was worried that the gunfire would attract zombies and some biochemical weapons that were several times more terrifying than zombies. Gil understood Luo Guang's meaning and nodded, then changed the magazine of the weapon in his hand and walked towards the position of the zombie dog, preparing to retrieve the short knife inserted into the zombie dog's neck. Upon seeing this, Luo Guang did not immediately leave the transfer location. Looking around, he didn't know if it was because this was the territory of the zombie dog. After looking around, Luo Guang didn't see any zombies appearing for the time being. He also took out loose bullets and loaded them into the only magazine of his G17 pistol. Along the way, about 2 magazines of bullets were fired out, previously in St. The ARS safe house received the box of 9mm bullets and there were very few left. 5, 6, 7, are there 7 bullets left? Luo Guang casually threw away the 9mm bullet packaging box that was no longer filled with bullets. "Come with me, I know a shortcut." Gil was much more familiar with the terrain of Raccoon City than Luo Guang, and quickly loaded his bullets before turning to Luo Guang and saying, "I'm fine on my end, too." Luo Guang inserted the magazine, reloaded it, and shifted his gaze away from the G17 pistol. Just as he turned his head and said to Gil, a zombie dog suddenly appeared in the pile of cars on his right side, aiming straight at Luo Guang. The system has already reacted, but the body's movements are still a bit slow. The gun was on his right hand, and when he pointed it at the zombie dog, Luo Guang could clearly see its fierce face and smell the foul odor of the sewer. With a thud, the zombie dog directly collided with Luo Guang's right hand, breaking free from the aim of his G17 pistol. Luo Guang's face showed displeasure as he faced the impact of the zombie dog with his right hand, unwilling to be outdone, and waved his force, directly smashing the zombie dog to the side. Just as Luo Guang was about to raise his gun and shoot, he had already realized it. However, due to the close proximity between the zombie dog and Luo Guang, Gil did not shoot recklessly. As soon as Luo Guang smashed open the zombie dog, he immediately fired and dealt with it. Seeing this, Luo Guang let out a breath and looked at his right arm. 3 bloody wounds were faintly visible within the clothes that had also been torn open 3 times. There's probably another chapter tonight. Probably meow, end of this chapter.